Welcome, everybody, to day 2 of the ACB DC Leadership Conference in memory of Charlie Crawford, our second executive director with the American Council of the Blind and a wonderful member and advocate of our organization and for the blind and visually impaired community. The theme for this year's conference is fostering voice, choice, and community. And I believe we really accomplished that yesterday, and I look forward to another wonderful day with our first day of our legislative seminar. I want to welcome everybody back, and I would like first to recognize our sponsors that do such a marvelous job of helping us promote this conference each year. Our presidential sponsor is JP Morgan Chase. Our congressional sponsor is Vanda Pharmaceuticals, and our Beltway sponsor is Vispero. So once again, thank you so much to all of our sponsors. And thank you, members and friends of ACB, for all your wonderful participation yesterday. We are going to again ask you to consider becoming a member of the Monthly Monetary Support Program, MMS. Yesterday, Edwin Crispin from California was our winner of the $50 gift card. So congratulations, Edwin, and hope you spend it well. We'll have another $50 drawing after today events on Monday, and also another one on Tuesday. And then everybody that participates this weekend will be in a big drawing for a smart television. So please consider participating in the Monthly Monetary Support Program. Gene Mann and George Holliday are standing by to take your information. You can reach them through email at acbmms@gmail.com. So that's askacbmms@gmail.com. Or you can leave them a message and they'll get right back to you at 202-743-0755. That's 202-743-0755. Thank you all so much, all of those of you that are members of the Monthly Monetary Support Program. MMS really is one of the key cornerstones for us being able to provide these wonderful programs and services to our community. And now I would like to introduce our Director of Advocacy and Governmental Affairs, Clark Rockful, to take us away for day 2 and the first day of the DC Leadership Conference Legislative Seminar. Clark, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dan, and hello to everyone. There are so many ways to join. It used to be a simple thing, but not only do we have people joining us over Zoom, but also ACB Radio, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, the ACB link, and smart speakers. So welcome to everyone for day 1 of the ACB Legislative Seminar. In the past, this event was only one day, but here we are embracing collaboration and flexibility and initiative as our ACB core values. We are not limited by hotel rooms and travel and squeezing congressional meetings into a single day. So why not do it up a bit, right? So we are coming to you over 2 days for this legislative seminar, 18 panels, more than 45 invited speakers and guests, and we'll be getting to our first ones here shortly. But again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your dedication to advocacy over what has been a truly challenging and change-inspiring year. And we are looking to build upon the success and the relationships that we have grown throughout 2020 and throughout all the years of the DC leadership meeting, all the way back to Charlie Crawford and even before. So we really want to keep this momentum going. This year's legislative seminar, we've grouped issues to 5 main tracks, and we'll be kicking off with a couple of those here this afternoon. The first one being transportation, Also, one that we're calling Live, Learn, and Earn with Vision Loss. And those will run concurrently this afternoon, breakouts A and B. And for those listening on ACB radio, those will be available on mainstream as well as live stream. And then we'll bring it all back together for our final session of today for another general session on voting accessibility. A hot topic for ACB, everyone across the country in 2020, and the disability and cross-disability community especially. And then tomorrow, we'll all be back here again for our general session, kicking off with the U.S. Access Board, and following that presentation with our digital inclusion track, as well as our health and wellness track. And then much like Dan did last night, by wrapping up just a great day of programming for the president's meetings with a fireside chat. I know I was blown away, and from the messages that we've been seeing, a lot of our members and friends, Dan, really loved that fireside chat. So I hope that's something that we can do each year, if not more than once a year. But we really want to keep that momentum going as well. So our final general session, we'll have the policy heads for our partner organizations joining us to share their priorities here for the 117th Congress and here in 2021. But I also want to highlight the ACB Legislative Imperatives, and you can find this information on the ACB website by visiting acb.org and looking at the information where they are linked on the homepage, as well as on the page for the DC leadership meetings. We have the reintroducing and passing the Medicare Demonstration of Coverage for Low Vision Devices Act. That bill's been introduced on a bipartisan basis each year since 2013. And we think with the emphasis placed on accessible healthcare, that is definitely brought to the forefront by the pandemic, but an issue that has persisted for many years prior to 2020, that this is a great opportunity to make headway on this issue. The second item, again, not new to ACB and our friends and members, but certainly exacerbated by the pandemic, is access to accessible transportation. And we are seeking for the bipartisan reintroduction and the passage of the Disability Access to Transportation Act. And then last but not least, perfectly dovetailed from our health and wellness track and the ACB Get Up and Get Moving campaign, the Exercise and Fitness for All Act, making exercise and fitness equipment more accessible for people who are blind and with vision loss in the cross-disability community, so we can get up and get moving, so we can take charge of our health and be ready to come out of social isolation and social distancing and ready to go here in 2021. Our advocacy as an organization has always been important. I know many of you have heard that from me, as well as Tony Stevens, Eric Bridges, Dan Spoon, Kim Charlson, Charlie Crawford, and on down the line over the years. So in case you're a little tired of hearing about how important advocacy is for me, we have a special guest who's going to be joining us to share how important advocacy is. Representative Gus Bilirakis from the 12th District of Florida and co-chair of the Congressional Vision Caucus.
Welcome to this year's American Council of the Blind's annual virtual summit. I'm Congressman Gus Bilirakis. In addition to representing Florida's 12th Congressional District, I'm the lead Republican on the Consumer Protection Subcommittee and a member of the Energy and Commerce Full Committee, the Health Subcommittee, and the Communications and Technology Subcommittee. I'm also the co-chairman of the Congressional Vision Caucus. In each of these roles, I'm keenly aware of the importance of ensuring access for Americans with disabilities. As an individual with hearing and visual impairment, these issues are incredibly personal to me. I understand the unique struggles that those with these challenges face every day as they seek to fully participate in all aspects of society and perform the daily activities of life. I will never stop fighting for you. While I would love to be greeting you in person, and in most years, I hope to do so because we have in most years, and we hope to do so again very soon. I understand this virtual experience improves safety for everyone, and it is very effective. It's an honor to greet you, and most important, to thank you for your advocacy. No substitute for your advocacy. Lawmakers meet with many people each day, but I found that it is the personal, individual stories, keep telling those stories, that truly make the biggest impact. Sharing the challenges that you and I or your loved ones face due to vision loss can help to garner much needed support for the legislative changes we as a caucus are hoping to make. So thank you for getting outside your comfort zone and educating your elected officials about how Congress can make a positive difference in the lives of those living with vision loss. I know you will do great work. You have in the past, and I know you'll do great work in the future. Again, thank you for participating, and I look forward to meeting with you again in person real soon. God bless you.
All right. Thank you so much, Representative Bilirakis, and everything that you do for your constituents and all Americans living with vision loss. And how impactful. I know it might seem a little cheesy or corny to say, especially when we say it, how impactful sharing our personal stories can be in advocacy, but it's so true. So sharing personal stories when you're working with your state and special interest affiliates to schedule those meetings this week and next with our members of Congress, really putting the personal touch on what having access to low vision devices or accessible health and exercise and fitness equipment would mean to you. What more accessible transportation options would mean for your quality of life and independence and economic opportunity. Those are going to be the messages that we carry on Capitol Hill, albeit virtually this year. And those will be the stories and the relationships that we build that help us move these issues forward. So this year, it's not the dawning of the age of Aquarius, but the dawning of a new Congress, the 117th Congress. We're in the first term here in 2021, and it's also the first year of a new administration in the White House. So President Biden, Vice President Harris, the 46th president. So there's a lot of changes happening in Washington, D.C., and it's a great opportunity for us to reconnect with familiar friends and also meet and connect with new members and their staffs. But to join us now and talk with us about the political landscape here in 2021 and for the 117th Congress, he joined us last year at our last in-person event, so many months ago. And he's back again this year. Charles Cooper, the Managing Director and Head of Accessibility or Community Engagement for Signal Group. Charles, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks especially to Clark and Tony and Eric and other friends at ACB for the invite to be here.
Charles.
It does seem like last year's conference was about 6 years ago, but I'm excited to be back and really look forward to getting into more of a conversation when we get into some questions and answers. So Clark, should I just proceed and then we'll do questions after?
Sounds good. Thanks, Charles.
Okay, great. Well, I was, I want to talk about four things really. One is just give you an overview of sort of where the focus in the Biden administration is. Secondly, a little bit about what to expect in 2021. I know nobody wants to hear it, but I'll touch on politics of 2022 and 2024. And also, since everyone's going to be communicating with their policymakers, I thought I'd just give a couple helpful hints of things that we've seen, especially during COVID. But I'd first note that, as Clark is talking about the 5 policy tracks that you all are focusing on: voting, transportation, education, employment, digital health and wellness, they so perfectly align with many of the priorities that the new administration and new Congress is focusing on, especially the 3 policy legislative imperatives that you'll be talking about. So I only highlight that as, this year may be a little bit different as you're having some of these conversations with your elected officials, because there's been not only a change in personnel, but also a change in priority, a change in focus, and because of COVID, a significant change in how people are viewing the policy landscape. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the Biden administration. People, when we give these talks, people always ask, what are the top 3 priorities of the new administration? And in this one, it's hard to say that COVID is not all of the top 3, but COVID is clearly leading the way when it comes to how the administration is focusing their people, their time, and their agenda. And that's really, across several different issues. One is COVID relief, on the ground relief that the Congress is considering now. Secondly, in no particular order, is vaccine distribution, which is considerably ramping up. And then third, which we're not there yet, but is more economic recovery. I think what we've seen over the last, close to a year and into this administration, since COVID started, when you're seeing these packages move through, it's a lot of money, but it's largely been focused on more immediate, near-term, on-the-ground relief. And at some point, we're going to convert, or they will convert, into looking more at economic recovery over the long term. I don't think, as I said, we're there yet, but for now, everything is focused on this one relief bill and vaccine distribution from a COVID perspective. So in addition to COVID, obviously the new administration is really focused on nominations and staffing. They're about a little over 1 month in, and about half the cabinet is in place, which obviously means there's a lot of folks that are not. I believe there's 4 hearings going on this week of cabinet members. Next week, there's some plan to be considered on the floor, but getting the cabinet together and then senior staff and other nominees together is really important. And then this reconciliation package, which is moving through Congress now and will likely be done by mid-March, is something that is a really big focus and priority. In terms of what to expect, because there's a lot of, with a new administration and a new Congress, everybody, believes that everything is going to be new and exciting and move quickly. And I don't mean to counter that narrative, but these are very tough. It's a very tough process to start moving things when there's a new administration, because they're just trying to get ramped up. But a couple of things to expect. One is the immediate focus is on this relief package. And because of procedural difficulties, it's going to take a little bit of time to get through the House and Senate. But that is where all the focus legislatively is going to be on. This is not going to be the last stimulus package. I think there will be another one, and the next one will likely be probably more focused on broader recovery. But there certainly will be, I believe, another stimulus package related to COVID. Third is infrastructure and transportation, which obviously touches on some of the core issues that you all will be speaking to your policymakers about, including accessibility, and also anyone who is will be talking about autonomous vehicles. You know, that a big transportation package has to be done by the end of September. That was supposed to be done last year, but they punted it a year. So it has to be done by the end of September. The committees right now are just in the early stages of getting that new legislation drafted, meeting with stakeholder groups. So your conversations are very timely on the accessibility front as it relates to transportation. And it is very likely that that will be paired with a broader infrastructure package, which also could touch on a number of your issues. Infrastructure is very broad. It's not sort of the traditional focus on transportation only, but it crosses everything from healthcare to energy, transportation, financial services, everything. So there's opportunities, especially on the funding side, to include priorities within infrastructure. Obviously, there's also going to be a lot of attention on funding for the year, funding all the agencies, and that has to also happen by the end of September. And then for at least the foreseeable future, there will be a lot of activity on the Senate floor trying to finish all the nominations. There's a lot of nominations when a new administration comes in, as I mentioned earlier, and those will have to take place here in the near term. There will be a considerable amount of oversight. As you can imagine, the Senate, being a new Democratic majority, has not had to chair committees in a while, and now that they will, there will be a significant amount of oversight, and that oversight is going to be used in part to help validate and justify the priorities and the agenda of the Democratic majority in the Senate. So that's also something really important to monitor. And lastly, I would note a little bit about partisanship. When I was talking the last time I was at the ACB conference, I mentioned how Congress was at the highest point of partisanship probably in recent history. I think it's fair to say that we've exceeded that at this point. That being said, I think there's going to be a lot of partisanship in public, and there will be a lot of negotiation behind the scenes. I anticipate that Senator McConnell, along with his leadership team, will actually be heavily negotiating with the Democratic majority, because they need to be able to reach that 60 vote threshold, and it's everybody's interest. Coming up to yet another election year, it's in everybody's interest to try to move policy. And so I would anticipate there's actually going to be a lot more negotiation and bipartisanship behind the scenes, not necessarily in the papers or highlighted on the Sunday shows, but there will be a lot of bipartisanship that will take place, and I anticipate large legislation moving. The other important thing to realize is, because of the narrow majority, the Senate is split evenly 50-50, and the vice president breaks the tie on all votes and has already done so in some cases. But because of that, the real power players here are going to be the moderates. So members of the Senate, like Senator Manchin from West Virginia or Senator Collins from Maine, will really be the power players when it comes to moving legislation. One member moving on either side of an issue can be the difference between passage or not. So there is a lot of focus on trying to look to the middle of the aisle there and position issues in a bipartisan manner. The issues that you're focused on are obviously very bipartisan, which positions you all in ACB well. And I anticipate that that will help move things a little bit easier across the finish line. A couple things about the election. I know all of us have election fatigue at this point, but in Washington, D.C., there's never a time when an election isn't happening. And we are actually only 624 days away from the 2022 election. A couple things that's important to note here. One, as you all know, it was a really good election night for Senate Democrats and Democrats pushing for President Biden to be in the White House. Republicans actually had a pretty good election night in the House. They overperformed predictions and closed the gap pretty narrowly. Right now, there's 3 vacancies in the House, 2 of which are Republican seats, 1 of which is a Democrat. But with those vacancies, there's 211 Republicans and 221 Democrats. That narrowed the margin significantly since the last election. And many of the Democrats that were able to hold on in very tight races are in extremely marginal districts, very moderate districts, which are usually the ones in a election that have the toughest time on each side of the aisle. And historic trends show that the party not in the White House tends to have a good election year in these off election years. So I think Republicans are really hoping to take back the House, and that's very possible given the numbers and historic trends. In the Senate, Democrats seem pretty well positioned. There's a good number of tough Republican seats up for election that Republicans currently hold, but that Democrats won in the presidential election. And those are up for re-election, so those will be tough to hold on to. And a number 3 retirements already among Senate Republicans that the Senate will have to defend. So it appears to be, positive trends and picture for Republicans in the House, and positive trends and picture for Democrats in the Senate. But there's a long way to go, and we'll obviously be monitoring that closely, as I'm sure you will be as well. I wanted to close before we open it up for questions to highlight a couple. From my standpoint, as I spend a lot of time doing advocacy and work on Capitol Hill and within the administration, just some guidance or tips, especially as it relates to the changing dynamics of COVID. First and foremost is obviously the manner in which we're communicating with policymakers is very different now. In-person meetings are not happening, and therefore, everything by call or Zoom or email communication, which has its own challenges for sure, but it also allows people to more directly and more regularly communicate with their policymakers. And if I didn't mention this last year, I certainly want to mention it this year, which is, if during these leadership summits, leadership conferences, it's the one and only time in the year that you're communicating with your policymakers, it's really a lost opportunity. The benefit of advocacy and the benefit of engaging with policymakers is to really create an ongoing dialogue where there's constant communication back and forth to your policymakers. Ultimately, you want to be a resource to those who have influence and are well positioned to impact the issues you care about. And when those issues arise, you want them to be as much of a priority as possible. And in order to do that, you want to position yourself as a resource. And the best way to do that is to stay in regular communication. ACB is obviously a powerhouse when it comes to influencing the array of stakeholders and policymakers in Washington, D.C. But it's important they also hear from their constituents back home and not just once a year or twice a year, but as regularly as possible, to make sure that among all the noise in Washington, D.C., with a lot of people communicating, you're able to effectively impact their decision-making as it relates to not only the 5 tracks, but also the legislative imperatives that you will be talking about this year. So appreciate everybody's commitment. I'm really excited to be back. And with that, Clark, I will turn it back over to you and answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you for stressing the importance of building those relationships with our members of Congress and their staff, and becoming a trusted resource to help drive those issues forward, as well as being there and being a trusted resource in case the staff or member has questions or wants to seek input or guidance on other policy issues as well. And as Charles said, we do have time here for a few questions. So I think we have our Zoom host that will remind folks on how to raise your hand, and we'll take a few questions.
Thank you, Clark. If you are on a PC and you would like to ask a question, it's Alt-Y. On a Mac, it's Option Y. On your mobile phone, it is on the face of your screen. And on a landline, it would be *9. Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, I have 2 things. The first thing I wanted to ask was, during, the last year, this pandemic, the world has been leveled, both, disabled community and the community at large, to a place where I think the quote unquote normal community has never experienced things the way we experience them in such a real-time effect. And I'm wondering, in advocating, there's been some conversation back and forth among a lot of us, whether or not it's appropriate and worth leveraging the fact that some of the things that the world at large has experienced is something that we or comparable to things that we experience in day-to-day life, and leveraging that in trying to make our points and making our personal stories more resounding and more comparable. And then the second thing I wanted to ask was, we're having, a lot of us across the country are having hard time securing some of the meetings because of all the business that's being done in DC. It's a historically unique year. I don't think we've ever seen a year like that before. So how far out should we be asking for meetings if we can't secure something for this week or next week?
2 really, really good questions, and thank you for both of them. On the first, I would say the greatest impactful way to advocate is to tell the story. And I think the answer to your first question, I would say, is it's important to tell your story, not only how your story, highlights some challenges in times that COVID doesn't exist. And I think that's important to talk about, but also tell your story within the context of COVID. So I would say, yes, absolutely. That is something to talk about and leverage. And your story is the most important part of advocating when you're doing it to a policymaker that represents you back home. Secondly, on scheduling, unfortunately, there's no magical solution to scheduling. I would say the earlier you can make the request, the better, and the more flexibility that you can have, the better. So if they're not able to do it during this section of time here that you're using for this leadership conference or legislative conference, I would try to give them as much advance notice as possible, or put it on them to provide you with the dates that work if your schedule is fairly flexible. But I think the goal on having everybody do meetings in a narrow period of time is obviously to maximize the level of messaging and the same narrative going out to policymakers across the board. In cases where that's not possible, obviously you need to do it when they're available. And we're running into that. There's a lot of people trying to trying to get meetings now. And because of a new administration and new Congress, there's a lot of new issues that everybody's very, very active on. So don't get too down about it, but I would just try to aggressively get back on their schedule when it works, if it doesn't work during this time frame.
Okay, next is Charlene. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and thanks for being with us. I'm concerned about these stimulus packages that you indicate are coming up. While there are millions of people who need this aid, and I appreciate that, there are also quite a number of us who do not. And I would like to know whether these stimulus packages that are coming up next are going to be geared more for those who really need it, say at a certain income level or below. And if so, whether the money that is saved from that can then be transferred to other areas such as transportation. Thank you.
That's another great question. Candidly, all that's been out there is our proposals at this point. It's expected to move through the House this week. And then, the Senate will have to move their own version, and they'll have to get together and finalize a version. I hesitate to articulate a vision for the entire bill, since I don't know what the end product is. But I would say that I think part of it is narrowly focused on individuals, and in some of those cases, it is dependent on, there are income thresholds and other, I should say broadly, just thresholds involved in who gets that, and a good amount of it is not necessarily focused to individuals. So it's probably a mix of both, and this is all being done sort of through a very different legislative tactic called reconciliation, which I don't want to bore anybody with that hasn't studied that, but it's a way to get this done a little bit quicker and without the 60 vote threshold in the Senate. So it will take some negotiation back and forth, but probably not as much as a normal piece of legislation going through regular order. So we'll have to review it when there's a more final product. We don't have that at this stage. So I'm not sure I can make a guess.
Okay, next is
as to the savings. That is also not clear at the moment, but a lot of this will be new funding.
Okay, I'm sorry. 591, last three, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. First, this is Dan Sipple with Randolph Shepherd Vendors of America. First, let me thank you for your willingness to share your expertise with all your foresight and insight. But I'm with the Randolph Shepherd Vendors of America, president of it. And my question pertains to the infrastructure aspect of things. And as I worked for the state of Wisconsin for a number of years, and I was quite active in the union. And when we went to negotiate a union contract, our philosophy was that if you want policy or humanitarian issues, you ask for them when the left wing was in power, because we in Wisconsin's a swing state. And if you want anything with monetary, you go to the right wing, because the right wing has a firm belief that money solves all issues. But so with the infrastructure bill, that's going to probably include highways and bridges, because they've been ignored over the years. And there's been a movement for many decades about privatizing the highway rest areas. And the last big movement was when the Portman amendments for the Transportation Reauthorization Bill about 10 years ago. And we soundly defeated that with the assistance of Barbara Boxer out of California. And we owe forever indebted to her. But, there's a fear that with all these COVID care bills, there's going to be a lot of bills to be paid in the next couple of decades. So they're going to be searching for money wherever they can find it. And so there could well surface again that the elephant in the room could come to fruition again is that, are they going to want to privatize the highway rest areas and sell them off to help pay for the infrastructure for the roads and bridges, and take those jobs away from us? Because under the Randolph-Shepard Act, we have priority, and under the Kennelly amendments, which reaffirm that we have it on the highway rest areas. So all they'd have to do is nullify the Kennelly amendments, and they could sell off the highway rest areas, which would put about half of us right out of business in the blindness community. So my concern is that, it's a policy and humanitarian issue, but it's also a fiscal issue, because they're going to be searching for money. So the right wing's going to say, hey, we got a pot of money, we could sell this off to Dog and Suds or whatever. McDonald's would love to have this property, this egress and access to these. But the humanitarian side is that, it's a job transfer from the disability community to the able-bodied community. What would be your best approach, being that we have such a close margin? If this elephant surfaces, where do we put our emphasis? We have to play everybody on both sides of it, I would think.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually am not, that's not an area where I have a ton of expertise, but I'll sort of answer it broadly and then give you some ideas of how you should get out there. First of all, they've been talking about doing an infrastructure package for close to 5 years now. And, they're a year late on the transportation bill. And a big reason for that is they've had a very difficult time coming up with a new revenue solution that is big enough to impact our nation's transportation and infrastructure. But it's also in part because, these are really big changes that are based on formulas and a highway trust fund and other funding sources that have been around for a long time and have not changed. So revenue and money, is a big part of trying to solve the problem. So you're certainly not wrong there. I would say, I don't specifically know about what level of risk the issue is that you brought up as it relates to rest stations. And I can certainly find that out and certainly work with Clark and others to get that message back to you. But I would say if you feel that is at risk, and in fact, if it is at risk, I would make sure that early on, so that's likely not to happen in real time past the House and Senate, probably until, the summer, early in the summer, maybe around July 4th. And then they'll negotiate it after that to be done by the September 30th deadline. I think that transportation and infrastructure will be put together in most scenarios. I believe that will happen. But I would say you want to get out there early and often, and obviously it sounds as though you probably have a fairly large footprint of those that would be impacted, and making sure that they're reaching out to their members of Congress and flagging the opportunity costs that would come with that kind of policy change, I think is really important. And since everybody's focused on infrastructure and transportation as a big solution, an economic recovery solution at the end of the year, people are really focused on trying to get some of those solutions ironed out right now. So it's not too early to start those conversations. But I wish I knew more about the issue specifically. I just don't. So I don't want to take a guess at how much of a risk that's at currently.
Ray Campbell.
And this will be our last question.
All right. Charles, good morning, and thank you again for sharing your expertise with us. My name is Ray Campbell from the state of Illinois. And my concern is about one of the aspects. There's been talk about, of course, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I think most of us would agree that some raise is needed. But in this time when you're asking small businesses that have been struggling through a terrible pandemic to, oh, we're going to let you come out. By the way, now you got to pay people more. I'm concerned about the effect that could have on blind and visually impaired business operators, particularly some of our vendors who who are struggling themselves and may need to be forced to start paying their people more. How do you think it'd be best to advocate on this minimum wage issue, recognizing that people probably need to make a little bit more, but also bringing forward the concerns about small businesses and the struggles that they've had, and not wanting to throw this burden upon them right away?
Thanks for the question, Ray. And obviously, minimum wage has been a priority of House and Senate Democrats for a while. The House passed a minimum wage increase last year, and it didn't move in the Senate. And President Biden on the campaign trail highlighted an increase in the minimum wage as one of his top priorities. So that's why now, with the House and Senate controlled by Democrats and President Biden in the White House, that's why there's been such a uptick in focus there, in addition to the fact that a number of states recently have, through constitutional ballot amendment, have increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So I think what's on the table is this proposal to phase in minimum wage, I think, to 2026. I could be wrong on that, where it eventually gets up to $15 an hour. There's a technical answer, which I'll give you, and there's sort of a broader practical answer. The technical answer is it's very difficult. We'll see here in the next week or so, but it's very difficult to find a way to increase the minimum wage in a manner that does not require 60 votes in the Senate, which is a complicated way of saying Republicans will have to sign off on a minimum wage increase. Most likely. There's still some question about that, but that's most likely. Secondly, at least 2 Democratic senators have already come out saying that they have some concerns with phasing in a $15 minimum wage. So there's a political hurdle that, or maybe even political hurdles that are difficult to overcome when it comes to this specific policy, regardless of what side of the issue you're on. There's some difficult hurdles there. When it's difficult legislatively and politically to get something across the finish line, and it has this much momentum across the country, generally speaking, what we have noticed over the years happens, and this may buck this trend or not, we're not sure, is members towards the center come together and start looking for alternatives to the policy that maybe scale it back a little bit in an effort to reach that higher vote threshold in the Senate. And I think we're starting to see that. There's a couple of Republican senators that are coming out with a proposal that doesn't bring the minimum wage to 15, but may adjust it over the year to a lower level. Obviously, states are doing a lot across the country. And so it's hard to see how this ends, but there's certainly, Ray, for someone who is expressing some concern about getting towards the $15 line, there's certainly a couple hurdles that Congress would need to cross that they're unable to do so right now. But we'll see that over the next couple of weeks, whether that is the case or that goes away. Otherwise, I'd anticipate some negotiation over the course of the year on that issue.
Great, Charles. Thank you so much for your time here and the expertise and experience that you're sharing with our members. We look forward to working with you in your capacity as Chair of Advocacy for Signal Group, as well as the great work that you're doing with the Signal outdoor practice here in the 117th Congress.
Thank you very much, Clark. Really appreciate it.
All right. And for the rest of the general session here, we have another guest, a gentleman who is no stranger to ACB. We've been working with Jeff Levitke, an attorney at law here in Washington, D.C., for going on 20 years now. And Jeff, good afternoon.
Well,
Hello, Jeff.
yep. Can you?
Hi. Yes,
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay.
we can. Thank you so
Okay.
much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And Jeff, you primarily worked with ACB on a little court case that we've been having an ongoing issue with, and that's regarding accessible paper currency.
It's been going on for now for about, well, since March of 2002. And I think, as most of your members are aware, in 2008, the district court issued an injunctive order requiring that currency be made accessible by the next major redesign. And over the years, the government has pushed back its scheduled redesign of currency for, was first set originally to be 2013 or so, and then moved up to 2017, and then 2020, and now is 2026. And so as of today, the deadline for making the next denomination of currency accessible will be 2026, at which date the $10 bill is scheduled to be redesigned. Now, as chance would have it, when the Biden administration came in, they announced that they wanted to accelerate the redesign to include Harriet Tubman in the bill, a portrait of Harriet Tubman in the bill. And the sense I'm getting is that they want to do it before 2026. And in fact, they want to do it before the next presidential election, which would be in 2024. So under the terms of the court's injunctive decree, they can't do that without also adding an accessibility feature to the currency. And so we've sent a letter on Friday to the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, saying that while we welcome the Tubman redesign, it has to be done concurrently with the accessibility redesign. And of course, we have not received a response to that letter.
And Jeff, you beat me to it. I was going to ask, so we have this injunctive order from 2008. We know that currency redesigns for paper currency must include accessibility for people who are blind. There's not a requirement for the timeline on which it needs to be done, but they are setting the timeline for when the currency will be redesigned. You discussed the letter sent by ACB, or on behalf of ACB, to the Secretary of the Treasury. What else do you think ACB and our members can do to push for accessible paper currency?
I think at this stage, the key is greater public awareness, the fact that this lawsuit, this injunctive order exists. I think that while almost everyone in the country has probably heard of the interest in redesigning the currency to incorporate Harriet Tubman, I think very few people really know and are aware of the issues involving accessibility currency. And I think it's that real lack of public awareness here that has allowed, in many ways, the administration to delay implementation of the redesign for so long. And I think that greater public pressure at this stage on the administration would have an enormously beneficial impact, because we believe, obviously, in civil rights for all Americans. And I think that that includes all minorities, as well as the people who are blind and visually impaired. And to leave out the blind strikes me as being not consistent with the administration's goals, which is to focus on human rights for all people. So I think the key here is to be a greater public awareness, so that people know that the government has a duty to redesign currency. And this in turn would put political pressure on the administration. My concern, albeit maybe not fully justified, but my concern is that the administration will try to incorporate the Tubman redesign without doing the accessibility redesign. And to forestall that possibility, I think greater public pressure is important. So I would urge your members to write their senators, their congressmen, their public officials, whoever they may be, and remind them that there is an obligation on the part of the government to, in the next redesign, to incorporate an accessibility feature.
And thank you for that, Jeff. And just to be clear, it's not an either or choice, right? The government doesn't have to decide whether or not they redesign the $20 bill to include Harriet Tubman or to include accessibility.
My position in this is that it's not an either. In fact, it can't be an either or choice. It has to be, should be both. I mean, I think that the Tubman redesign is fine, but they have to, at the same time, concurrently with the Tubman redesign, do what is required by the terms of the injunctive decree, which is at that time also incorporate an accessibility feature into the banknotes.
And we know within our membership in the broader community, there are millions of Americans within the intersection of disability, as well as being African American or people of color. And what a great way to have a legacy of inclusion live on by having the first accessible paper currency be that one honoring a great American who fought for freedom like Harriet Tubman.
I totally agree, and I wholeheartedly endorse that sentiment. I think that is the key. I think that Harriet Tubman stood for civil rights for all Americans, and I think that that's what her record is. And I think it would be doing a disservice to her record to incorporate a portrait with her while leaving out an accessibility feature, which could be of so much help to millions of visually impaired people in this country.
Jeff, thank you so much for speaking with us today and sharing this issue with our members. Folks, we will certainly have more on this topic going forward. But again, Jeff, thank you so much.
And thank you very much for having me.
All right, folks, we are reaching the end of our first general session for day one of the legislative seminar. Again, I just want to give a quick thank you to President Spoon for welcoming us in to start today's proceedings, as well as Charles Cooper, Managing Director and Chair of Advocacy for the Signal Group, and Jeff Levitke, an attorney who is helping ACB advocate for accessible paper currency. Next up, we'll have a 15-minute break where you can stay tuned for the Connection Show here on ACB Mainstream. Our Breakout A featuring transportation with presentations from the Department of Transportation, Office of Aviation Civil Rights, and a panel of airline industry representatives. And our final panel on autonomous vehicles will be up right here on Mainstream. And then over on live stream, we will have Live, Learn, and Earn with Vision Loss, with panels focusing on special education, rehabilitation, and products and services for older Americans with vision loss. To close out the day, we'll be back here for our second general session dealing with accessible voting with a presentation from the Election Assistance Commission and a panel of local voting officials from around the country. So stay tuned, and we'll always squeeze in questions where there are times on these panels. So please be patient, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can throughout the day. Thank you, everyone, and keep advocating.
Well, here we are with Leadership Live. Hey, Tony, are you there? Very exciting. Wow, okay. And thank you, Tyson, for streaming here on ACB Radio Mainstream. Wow, we've got great numbers. I think I see.
It's amazing, isn't it, Debbie?
Yeah, 126 maybe on Zoom and 146 on Mainstream. It's great. Really excellent. You know, one of the things that I really appreciate about this year's seminar, Cindy, is many people having a chance to show up and express their concerns, their questions, their passions, their just what's on their mind. It seems like many more voices in networking. Are you noticing that?
For sure. And to learn. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And to
I'm
learn.
learning stuff that I probably knew somewhere, but it's being refreshed and renewed. And, you know, I loved what Jeff just gave us about the currency issue, because it's a real issue. And man, my wheels started turning, you know, like, what could we do? We've got to think up some really cool ways to get out there in the general population and make this an issue for everyone, that they know about it, not just those of us in the blindness movement.
What about some role plays?
I was thinking that.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like you hand people the same sizes. I mean, we could even use the money that comes in a Monopoly game, you know, and say, okay, you get all these pieces of paper. Now what do you do? There's Tony. Yay. There's my partner in crime for the Leadership Live.
I can duck out of here now.
Oh, well, thanks, Cindy. But yeah, we'll have to talk more about this.
No, I love the idea of doing some stuff and making some videos and getting them out on YouTube, making it really visible, you know, for folks to see that there really is an issue. More importantly, that there has been a court case and that we won it. And, you know, this isn't like that we're trying to wish for something that shouldn't happen, right?
Well, and why should we be excluded?
Exactly.
When it is different in other countries. And I just like to go back to empathy. How would you feel if that were you? How would you feel if you were handed all these?
And you didn't know which bill was which. And
and you thought you were getting $50 back in, you know, or 2 20s and a 10, and then somebody
you got 3 ones
only gave you 3 ones.
Oh dear.
Hey, Tony.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm good. Can you hear me or no?
Indeed. We're giving you that t-shirt. Can you hear me now? I love it. Yes, we do. It's great. All right. Are you there? I know
I'm here. Hit the mute button on the microphone like an idiot, and then there we go.
All right.
Sorry, I'm late.
It's okay. Cindy and I were
it's snowing here in Washington. I was waiting on a bus, but I've been here the whole time.
I know. It's well, you know, there have been so many phone calls and other things going on, but our numbers are great. I see well over 120 in here on Zoom and over 140 on the stream. And people showing up, having a chance to express and ask questions and make comments. And that's really networking at its finest.
Definitely. And it's been, you know, we're also pushing this out over acb.org/live.
That's YouTube,
so for folks that want an easy way, that's YouTube or Facebook or the communities. So you can access either of the 3 streams, whichever one loads up fastest for you. We're finding that YouTube has less of the clutter that, you know, you often get with, you know, like Facebook when you log into Facebook and stuff like that.
Well, it's probably a good way to watch those numbers and see how we're doing in targeting different markets or different avenues of how people would tune in, right?
It's actually why I was a little bit late. I had the joys of when we're watching on the streams is things are delayed, and I've been going in the streams kind of, you know, taking down little notes to say how many people are watching at which time. And I guess I was about 3 minutes behind still with Jeff talking about currency when Kelly's like, do you hear Debbie? And I'm like, like, so my stream was slow. I guess I had it.
Oh, well, you know, radio people, that's the thing about radio people. We could talk to ourselves, you know, we end up doing that, but I'd rather talk to you.
Those radio days when I was in radio in the 90s, that you'd have a microphone and you have no idea someone was listening.
That's
like
right.
2 a.m, late night shift.
But I love having you here. So it's great. So
it's nice to have a co-pilot.
Yeah. So do we have any guests today? I think we do.
We've got a mini mall minute coming up.
Hey.
And so if our host, if Carla
or Patty, are you there? Mini Mall Minute.
So we'll see if they need to be unmuted real quick.
What's on special at the Mini Mall for the minute?
We need a mini mall jingle.
You know, I was even thinking if I had planned it right, I would have done a little music thing for Leadership
All right,
Live.
Patty's available. There she
Oh,
is.
thanks, Cindy. Hey, Patty.
Thank you.
Hey, can you hear
Good
me?
afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
For some reason, my video's not coming up, so we're going to do it without video.
I think you look
Give us
great
a good
today.
description, Patty, of what we
Oh,
got.
thank you.
You look fine.
Jeez.
I think it's
Well,
because you came in as an attendee and not a panelist. I think that's the reason.
I don't have a panelist
We'll get you
connection.
taken care of, Patty.
You'll
Sorry.
get it.
Okay. All right. So
I could
just went
promote her
around-
really quick.
Well, would
Would
she
you like
have
that?
video?
Yeah, she'd have
Do you
video.
have something to
Yeah.
show us, Patty?
Oh, yeah.
You're about to go
I'll
on
just
camera.
promote you, Patty.
Oh, we
Yeah.
want to tell her
Okay,
in case you
promote
know.
me. Wow.
Yeah, why not? There.
What's wrong with being promoted?
We can fix
I'll take
that.
a promotion.
Yay, there she is.
There she is.
How
Now
can you
she'll
be
have.
in two
Now she can
places?
make video.
The
That's how you
magic
Now
can
I'm
be in two places
promoted.
at once.
multimedia.
Yes, you've been promoted.
Okay. So
You're like Colonel
um,
Sanders now. Kentucky.
I couldn't be like him. I do have recipes, but
I heard about those.
Give us
We
not
all
need
as
to
many
talk about that.
spices.
Yeah. So what do we got for
Um,
Mini Mall today? Mini Mall Minute.
So today, the Mini Mall Minute, want to remind everybody this is our DC celebration. Our phone number is 877-630-7190 or 877-969-MALL, which is 877-969-6255. And today we have a double special because if you orders over $75, you get 10% off. But today we have masks at 10% off. You know, we might be having vaccines, but I don't think these masks are gonna go away anytime soon. So I've got one just to show everybody, and I have it on. It has the logo across the mouth. It's a good way to promote your organization. I've had many questions when I am out. So that is one way that you can promote your group. Even though it says ACB, tell them about your local group. They are 1 for 10, 2 for 18, or 4 for 35.
And they're in a bunch of different colors, aren't they?
Oh, there's 27 different colors.
Wow.
We have
It's more than a rainbow.
We have white to black, blues, greens, pinks, purples, reds, any color that you would like. And if you get at least 4, you can give 4 different colors where you can wear them with anything. Masks do not need to match your clothing unless you are that way to have everything match, but no one has.
I mean, if
their
you want to go
masks
crazy with
matching.
27 masks, it helps ACB. So
That's right.
Yes,
the profits
it
we
does.
make from the mini mall, in case folks keep wondering why we're doing this, is the
And
money
they're
we actually make
yeah,
money as an organization through as contributions. So thank you for those that are shopping.
right. And we also have, I'm wearing an ACB cap. And it has the logo at top of it. We do have it in a light pink, black, tan, light blue, a butter, which is yellow, and a navy blue. And there is a gray also. All caps today are $18. They're really good to wear out. They help with glare. So if you're low vision, might help you with your glare going on. And we also have these accessory bags. I love these bags. They have 3 pockets across one side. They're not huge. They do have zippers for each one and one across the back. So there are potentially 4 pockets. The ACB logos at the bottom of the smallest pocket. It has a loop to which you can hook it onto with your keys, take it with you with all your, all your goodies in it, your credit cards. You're going to go spend money when you go out, right? And we'd like you to spend it with us first.
Right.
So, but these accessory bags are really good. And we have one more thing. We have our pad folios. These pad folios are great. Doesn't matter if you can see or not. You look really official with them. They're leather. They're faux leather. They have an ACB embossed logo on it on the front. It also has a file pocket on the front, a big file pocket inside, a zippered pocket that's about, I'd say 3/4 of the length of the side. It has a half pocket. It has small pockets for business cards, an area for your ID, It also has a pad of paper with it, a place for a pen, and it all zips up so you don't drop anything out.
Oh,
And
How
the
large
pad
is
folios are
yeah.
an 8.5. It's a little bit larger than 8.5
Oh, cool.
by 11.
Right.
I'd say it's about like 14, maybe 13, 14 inches
Okay,
by
cool.
about
You could
9
hold braille
inches.
paper. Yeah.
Oh, yes, it could hold braille paper, and these are $35. They make great gifts too.
Hmm.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Patty. And thanks for the
Cool.
mini mall minute. A little more than a minute. You had a lot to
That's
share today,
right.
which is great because the
I've
proceeds
got
help
more.
American
I'll be
Council of
back
Blind
later.
folks. All right. Hey, what's the number real quick one more time for people to order?
877-630-7190 or 877-969-6255.
Excellent. Thanks, Patty.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You know,
Great. Yeah, very
my wife
good.
got her second shot on Saturday for the vaccine, and it's very exciting. So half our grown-ups in our house are going to be clean, but even she's still wearing a mask now, just to play it safe and just for community,
Interesting.
reminding people that aren't vaccinated they should wear masks. So
Interesting.
so get some masks, folks. It's still,
Yeah, I know. I still
whenever I
have
get
a
my shot,
couple.
I'll probably still wear one for a while. And honestly,
Yeah.
this is the first year I haven't had like the flu or other, I usually get sick like twice a year just by being around kids and germs. I think there's talk about a lot of people still wearing masks even after, just on public transit and stuff. So.
Well,
And now you can go Brandon with ACB.
I want to brag about how wonderfully the fireside chat was last night. I was just so impressed, and leave it to Dan Spoon to get that going. And I really felt like everyone that was there because they so wanted to be there.
Yeah. And if you missed it, you can check it out on our YouTube and Facebook channels. It's been streamed and recorded, so you can find it for those that didn't get a chance to check it out last night.
That's what I want to see.
And we'll have the podcast
Fireside chat.
I think by
tonight.
tomorrow. Yeah.
So I think we're getting our guests queued up now for the afternoon sessions. This is going to still be a breakout channel. We'll be going into breakout mode. We'll still be streaming this channel over our stream. So the focus today on the breakout A in room A is going to be transportation. So I think some of the folks that I had the privilege to serve with when I was on Accessibility Advisory Committee are going to be joining. Lavon Chapman and Megan Johnson and Alex today with the Department of Transportation we've got down on our agenda. So welcome you all to the ACB as you're getting queued up, and we're just giving a transition here between our breakout sessions. For those that are doing the breakout B in room B, you should have gotten those links for those that have registered. For those that didn't register, you can listen in on ACB radio.
Live events.
Yeah. Thanks, Debbie. So on live events, and there's the number as well to dial in for that. So this is exciting. That'll be rehabilitation followed by education. Debbie Grubb's going to kick that off with a panel conversation on education. Folks know Debbie from Florida. She chairs our education committee. And then we're going to be going to rehabilitation and then senior issues and concerns. And
well, then seniors is back Kelly here Buckland in
National Council on Independent Living this afternoon.
Yeah, that's back here in on mainstream again. The last
afterwards, yeah, we'll have our last. Well, the Debbie, that's going to be on the B,
right?
And then we'll be back here live again. What at 3:45? I think.
Debbie? I think so. Yeah, right after another leadership live, we'll be back here, and on mainstream. So we have a full day, that's for sure.
We do have a full day. We'll have voting access at the end of the day, which was a huge issue we worked on last year. So.
And anyone who's so inclined, Next Generation has a community call tonight, and they're celebrating their first birthday. They chose not to stream it, but they will be, and it's on the community call list for today. And wow, I'm so proud of them. I mean, I just remember it was like yesterday, and they were brand new. So there they are.
1 year. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Next Gen.
Yeah. Well, splendid.
So, all right. Well, gosh, thank you, Tony. Anything else?
Nothing on this end so much. I mean, I guess we're just getting ready and waiting for our guests. I don't know. I think Clark's going to be moderating the transportation panel. So I don't know if Clark is getting mic'd back up. He deserved a break. It was wonderful hearing from Charles Cooper. Thank you, Charles, for joining us, as well as Jeff Levitke, talking about the currency, and Congressman Gus Bilirakis from the 12th District of Florida. So thanks to our Florida contingency of members that have had such a good relationship opportunity with Congressman Bilirakis as he continues to support us. So
That's great.
yeah.
All
Busy
right.
day. We started at 12 today too.
We did. Oh, and
I'm sure
I
you
know.
slept in till 11:50, didn't you? No, just kidding. We were on the phone earlier today, so you were not.
I know we have lots of fundraising things going on all the time, all week long. MMS always beyond this week, but MMS and see, I'm wearing your hat now, and the walk and the forum.
And we'll be having the MMS folks and the walk, I believe tomorrow. Leslie's going to join us for the auction. Well, no, I should say, yeah, some of those folks we talked about yesterday, but Leslie will join us from the auction tomorrow at 1. So tune in for folks wanting to find out about the auction that's been such a huge success.
Yeah.
We're doing the MMS. You can still have a chance to win those prizes. You can call 202-743-0755 or email askacbmms@gmail.com. That's askacbmms@gmail.com. And find out how you can support us a little bit each month.
You can still get Jason's MP3 for $25.
And that's if you go to the link for that, if you want to do the ACB radio, is
tinyurl.com/ACB radio. I could say it in my sleep.
And we had a couple people give yesterday. So thanks to those.
They did. Thank you for those of you who gave yesterday. I think we're just, we may have hit 4,000 this morning. I don't know. But anyway, it's all good. It's very exciting. And
I just heard the door in the office down the hall close. So maybe is Clark getting back on camera?
I am here and good.
Yay, Clark. All right.
All right.
Great. Well, I will close my
gladly
mic.
Pass the hat. Yeah.
And let you take over. All right. Thanks, Tony.
Tony and
Thank
Debbie.
you, Debbie, and enjoy everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we are here for our first breakout session in the transportation track. Again, thank you to everyone joining us for the general session this morning. And now we are going to talk about safe air travel for passengers and service animals. And our first guests are from the Department of Transportation, Office of Aviation Civil Rights. So we're joined by Levon Chapman, Deputy Assistant General Counsel, Alexander Tade, Director of Civil Rights Advocacy, and Megan Johnson, Senior Attorney with the Office of Aviation Civil Rights. So Levon, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Doing quite well today, Clark. Good afternoon to you.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for you and your team joining us. I'll let you take it from here to talk about what's new in the work that you all are doing at the Department of Transportation.
Sure thing, Clark. It's nice to see you. Thank you for having us here today. For everyone, as Clark noted, my name is Levon Chapman. I'm the Deputy Assistant General Counsel in the Office of Aviation Consumer Protection at the Department of Transportation. I've been with the department for quite some time now. I've been there for 16 years, and I've been with the Office of Aviation Consumer Protection since 2007. As Clark noted, with me today are Megan Johnson. She is a senior attorney. She has expertise in a lot of different areas, tarmac delays, but I think what folks are going to be most interested in hearing from her on is the traveling by air with service animals final rule. So I will try my best to get out of her way and just make some brief remarks in terms of what the office has been working on currently. I do want to note that I've been coming to this conference for a number of years. Of course, this is the first virtual year, but it's always wonderful to be here with this group. I really enjoy working with ACB. I think that over the years, we've been able to foster a very good and productive working relationship. And some of the things that I will talk about here, ACB has been directly involved as well. And I look forward to continuing that positive and productive relationship that we've developed. Just as a quick reminder about who we are as an office. Many of you may recall our office by our old name, which was the Office of Aviation Enforcement and Proceedings. Last year, we underwent a office name change in order to better reflect the work that the office does. While the office does do enforcement work, we really haven't, at least in my time in the office, done anything with respect to aviation-related proceedings. So it's kind of a relic of a name, and we thought that Office of Aviation Consumer Protection fit better, and people would understand more easily what it is we actually do here. We are one of 7 offices in the Office of the Secretary of Transportation. We're housed in the Office of General Counsel. We're roughly 30 people, I believe. Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around 32 folks now. Approximately half of the folks are attorneys in the office, and they're responsible for the enforcement, rulemaking, and outreach work that the office does. The other half of the office is, really the workhorse of the office, which are transportation industry analysts. They serve as the main face of the office to members of the public. They interact on a daily basis with members of the public and airlines, and provide information and assistance to consumers and investigate consumer complaints. So they do quite a bit on that front. And I think this is a good time, Alex, for you to cut in and talk about the complaint process and any other information you'd like to provide regarding complaints.
All right, thank you, Levon. I would like to echo what Levon said. It's a pleasure to be here. We've met with you guys many times over the years, and I enjoy the chance to come and speak with you, and I hope you guys enjoy the time that we spend with you. As Levon said, we do have a staff of about anywhere between 30 and 34 people. I oversee the analyst half of the staff, and we deal with a number of consumer-related issues, complaints. This year, with the pandemic going on, we have had a kind of change in our workload. We've been fielding a lot of consumer complaints in regards to refund issues. So the analysts have been spending a bulk of our time dealing with those types of issues, but that doesn't mean that we haven't been receiving disability-related complaints as air travel has started to pick back up. In the past 10 years or so, we always receive about 800 to 950 disability-related complaints annually. This year for 2020, we hit a low point for the lowest we've been since 2009, I mean. We've received 528 complaints, disability-related complaints. Now, we do investigate each one. When we do get the complaint, we have the carrier respond to it, respond back to the passenger, give us a copy regarding other additional information they may have, the passenger's record, and any notes that might have been filed by flight attendants and airline personnel. We will then investigate the complaints to see whether or not a violation of our Air Carrier Access Act has been violated or not. Once we reach a determination, we will provide the consumer with a copy of that determination as well. In the past, most of the complaints that we receive fall within one of 5 main categories. We have our top complaint category year in and year out, which is failure to provide timely wheelchair assistance. Then the other 4 categories, which vary based on the year, are failure to provide other assistance, service animal issues, assistive devices, stowage and delay and damaged issues, as well as seating accommodations. As I said earlier, this has been a rather unusual year, and we have seen a change in those top 5. Timely wheelchair assistance, assistive devices, and service animals are still in the top 5, but due to the current situations, and mainly in regards to some of the carriers' mask mandate policies, we have seen an uptick in both our general miscellaneous category, which would cover a number of issues of people complaining about the policy, having to wear a mask due to their disability and they couldn't. And in conjunction to that, our denial of transportation category. Both of those two categories have moved into the top 5, replacing timely assistance and seating accommodations. But that is a anomaly in the data just because of the current situations of the year. And as I said before, the majority of them are related to the carrier's mask policies. I would expect that in 2021, we will start seeing a revert back to our former trends. But what is rather interesting in this year, and it coincides a lot with what we're going to talk about later on today, is the service animals. The service animal complaints that we received this year has accounted for about 28% of the complaints we received, which has moved into the #1 topic. I'm probably going to expect to see that trend continue as people are getting used to the new service animal rules, but we won't know that until we move further and further into 2020. I'm sorry, 2021. All right, Levon?
Thanks for that, Alex. That was excellent information, and it's actually a good segue into the next thing that I want to talk about, which is the department's notice of enforcement policy on face masks. Just for planning purposes, after I talk about that briefly, I do want to briefly mention the Air Carrier Access Act Advisory Committee, and then talk about a couple of rulemakings before we move on to service animals. But with respect to the department's enforcement policy on face masks, I think folks know that on January 29th, the CDC issued an order requiring U.S. and foreign air carriers to use their best efforts to ensure that persons on flights to, within, or from the United States wear a mask for the duration of travel, including when boarding and disembarking aircraft. Shortly thereafter, the Transportation Security Administration issued a security directive to aircraft operators on face mask requirements to implement both the president's executive order on promoting COVID-19 safety on domestic and international travel, as well as to support enforcement of the CDC's order mandating masks. Many airlines had taken an initiative to require masks of passengers before the executive order on face masks and the CDC's order. But many of those carriers did not have exemptions for individuals with disabilities that could not wear or could not safely wear a face mask on a commercial aircraft. And so the department issued an enforcement policy that was aimed at reminding airlines of their legal obligation to accommodate the needs of passengers with disabilities when developing procedures to implement the federal mandate on the use of masks, and to describe how the office will determine whether airlines are complying with the requirements of the Air Carrier Access Act and Part 382 when implementing procedures requiring mask wearing by passengers. The notice makes clear that airline policies that expressly allow no exceptions to the mask requirement other than for children under the age of 2 violate the Air Carrier Access Act. The notice explains that children under 2 are exempted on the basis that they cannot wear or safely wear a mask, and that it would be a violation of the Air Carrier Access Act not to have an exemption for the limited number of individuals with disabilities who similarly cannot wear or safely wear a mask when there's no evidence that these individuals with disabilities would pose a greater risk to others than children under 2. The notice explains further that every passenger is a potential carrier of the virus, and the department's disability regulation allows airlines to impose reasonable conditions, restrictions, or requirements on a passenger with a disability who is able to wear or safely wear a mask. Some examples that are outlined in the notice of the restrictions that airlines may impose include requiring passengers to consult with the airline's medical expert or providing medical evaluation documentation from the passenger's doctor to determine if the passenger has a recognized medical condition that would preclude the wearing or safe wearing of a mask. Or requiring protective measures such as a negative test result from a COVID test, or sitting the passenger in a less crowded section of the aircraft. The notice gives airlines a period of up to 45 days to bring their policies into compliance with the Air Carrier Access Act. And so airlines are in the process of doing so now. I do want to briefly mention the Air Carrier Access Act Advisory Committee, which ACB has provided very valuable input on. I mentioned it last year. It was established pursuant to the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018. It consists of representatives of passengers with disabilities, airlines, airports, and others, and is tasked with assessing, identifying and assessing, among other things, the disability-related access barriers encountered by passengers with disabilities. There was a lot of work that was poured into that advisory committee last year. The first meeting was held in March of last year, and beginning in July, there were 3 subcommittees that began meeting, dealing with issues related to ticketing practices and seating accommodations, stowage of assistive devices, and assistance at airports and on aircraft, and related training of carrier personnel and contractors. The subcommittees met from July all the way through to December, and the work continues. Reports are being put together and will be presented at the next full advisory committee meeting when those reports are completed. The next meeting has not yet been scheduled, but it will happen sometime this year. Just quickly on rulemakings other than service animals, we still have on the books a second accessible labs rulemaking that was on the agenda. We issued a NPRM in December of last year that proposed specific measures for improving accessibility of lavatories on single-aisle aircraft, which would include changes to the interior of the lavatory, and additional services that airlines would provide with respect to lavatory access, training and improvements. The Part 2 rule would solicit comment and gather updated information on the costs and benefits of requiring airlines to make lavatories on new single-aisle aircraft large enough equivalent to that are currently found on twin-aisle aircraft. I should note that with any new administration that comes in, there is generally a period of time that the administration will take to review rulemakings. So this rulemaking, the second rulemaking, is one, actually both of these rulemakings would be subject to the administration's review, and the administration will make a determination as to what next steps would be taken with respect to these. One last rulemaking that I wanted to mention is a rulemaking that would amend Part 382 to clarify an airline's responsibility to provide prompt assistance to passengers with disabilities who request assistance moving within the airport. The rule, Part 382, clearly states that prompt assistance must be provided with respect to enplaning and deplaning, but the word prompt does not appear in the moving within the terminal provisions of the rule, although the department has interpreted that rule to require prompt assistance, and this rule would make that, that clear. So with that, I will stop and I will pass it over to Megan to talk about the traveling by air with service animals final rule. Megan?
Hi, as Levon said, I am just going to give you a quick overview of the provisions in the traveling by air with service animals final rule, which was published in the Federal Register on December 10th, 2020, and became effective on January 11th, 2021. A service animal under the new rule is a dog, regardless of breed or type, that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of a qualified individual with a disability, including a physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or other mental disability. As you'll note, this definition is very similar to the DOJ's ADA definition of a service animal, but the one key difference in the ACAA different definition is that we include explicit language to make clear that a service animal is a dog regardless of breed or type. So what about emotional support animals? I think that's probably the number one question we've gotten since the rule has been issued. Airlines are no longer required to recognize emotional support animals as service animals, and airlines can now treat them as pets. But we've encouraged those folks who are still interested in traveling with emotional support animals to check airline pet policies. Some airlines may not transport pets at all. Some transport pets for a fee or only in the cabin or in the cargo hold. So that's what we've been telling those folks. As far as miniature horses, I wanted to make clear here that under the department's ACAA rule, miniature horses do not qualify as service animals. Dogs are the only animal species that qualify as service animals. And I really wanted to make that point because while DOJ's ADA service animal regulations require covered entities to recognize miniature horses as a reasonable modification, the ACAA definition of a service animal only requires airlines to recognize dogs, no other species. So no miniature horses, rabbits, cats, birds, or other animal species. How does an airline determine if a dog is a service animal? Well, there's a few ways. The airline can ask two questions, and these questions are, again, very similar to the questions that entities covered under the ADA regulation can ask. The first question is the animal required to accompany the service animal user because of a disability? And the second question, what work or task has the animal been trained to perform? Another way that an airline can find out if an animal is a service animal is to observe the animal's behavior. Service animals shouldn't be running around. They must be trained to behave properly and must be under their handler's control. And finally, the airline can take note of physical indicators such as harnesses, leashes, vests. Service animals, airlines can now require that service animals be harnessed, leashed, or tethered at all times on the aircraft, and in air carrier controlled spaces and at the airport. How many service animals can a handler bring on the aircraft? Airlines are not required to accept more than 2 service animals per passenger with a disability. Where can service animals sit on aircraft? Airlines can require that a service animal fit on the passenger's lap and or in the passenger's foot space without encroaching onto another passenger space. If a passenger travels with 2 service animals, both must fit in the passenger's lap or in the passenger's foot space on the floor. So we got a lot of questions in the with respect to this provision in the NPRM, and folks wanted to know, what can the airline do if a service animal encroaches onto another passenger space? We included language in the final rule to clarify that airlines cannot automatically refuse to transport a service animal that doesn't fit on a passenger's lap or in the passenger's foot space. Before refusing to transport a large service animal or 2 service animals that encroach onto another passenger space, an airline must first offer the passenger the opportunity to transport the animal in the cargo hold, see if there's some other area on the aircraft that the service animal can fit next to an empty seat perhaps, or next to a passenger who's willing to share their space, or as a last alternative, offer the passenger the opportunity to fly on a flight, on a later flight with more space. When it comes to documentation, there are 2 forms that airlines are permitted to now require from service animal users: a U.S. Department of Transportation Service Animal Air Transportation form and a U.S. Department of Transportation Service Animal Relief Attestation form, which only applies to flights that are 8 hours or more. So the first form airlines can require on any flight, but the second, the relief attestation, only applies to flights that are 8 or more hours. There is one exception to this general rule. Forms that are required to comply with requirements from federal agencies, U.S. territories, or foreign jurisdictions such as Hawaii's Hawaii's animal permit requirements may be required in order for a service animal to enter into a particular jurisdiction. Service animal users should always fill out the form as truthfully as possible. We have gotten some questions about certain fields on the service animal forms. And we do make note on the form that there is a warning that false information would be considered a federal crime. If the airline has reason to suspect fraud, that someone is fraudulently filling out the form, the airline can report it to DOT along with an explanation of the purported fraud, and DOT will refer it to our Office of the Inspector General for investigation and prosecution. We don't anticipate receiving a lot of claims of fraud at DOT. As we explained in the preamble to the final rule, the circumstances that we think that would elicit these fraud investigations would occur when a service animal has caused severe injury to a person or animal, and the air carrier in that instance would likely claim fraud, probably disputing the animal's training. With respect to the service animal air transportation form, service animal users are asked to attest that their animal's vaccinations are current. Veterinarian attestations are not required. That was something that was proposed in the NPRM. And again, the only person who may be required to fill out the service animal air transportation form is the handler or the service animal user. The form also asks service animal users to attest to the fact that the animal has been trained and provide the name and contact information of the trainer. Acknowledge that the user understands that they may be charged for any damage caused by their service animal, so long as airlines charge passengers without disabilities to repair similar kinds of damage. The purpose of the form is to both educate passengers on what to expect of a service animal with respect to the animal's behavior, and to seek service animal users assurances that they understand these expectations. We received a lot of questions about the trainer field on the form. Service animal users should, again, fill out the form as truthfully as possible, but I did want to clarify that service animal users, some do self-train their animals, and for those folks who do self-train their animals, just be prepared to answer questions from the airline about what work or tasks the animal has been trained to perform. With respect to the service animal attestation or relief attestation, again, I just want to reiterate that airlines can only require this form for flights that are 8 or more hours. And on this form, service animal users are asked to describe how their animal will refrain from relieving itself or how it will relieve itself in a sanitary manner, and acknowledge that, again, that the service animal user may be responsible for damage caused by their service animal, so long as the airline charges passengers without disabilities to repair similar kind of damage. So where can passengers find the DOT service animal forms? Airlines that require the DOT service animal forms must make them available on their website in an accessible format. The forms must be on the airline's primary website and conform to the WCAG 2.0 AA requirements. U.S. airlines must also have copies of the forms available for passengers at each airport they serve, and foreign carriers must have copies of the forms available for passengers at each airport serving a flight that begins or ends at a U.S. airport. The department has also posted sample accessible version, PDF versions of the forms on its website. You can find that at www.transportation.gov/air consumer. But I will note that while the DOT forms are fillable PDF versions, the forms should be submitted directly to the airlines and not to DOT. We have had that question come up since the rule has been in place. So another question that we received is how frequently can airlines request or require these forms from passengers? Airlines cannot require DOT forms each time the passenger flies. Airlines can only require the DOT forms on a per trip basis. So the first flight on the passenger's reservation. So not the departing and arriving flight, but just on the departure flight. If it's one reservation or one ticket. Can airlines require passengers to submit DOT forms in advance? So this depends. For reservations that are made more than 48 hours before the flight, airlines can require forms in advance or at the passenger's gate. But if a passenger doesn't provide the forms in advance, we still let the airlines know in the rule that airlines must try to accommodate the passenger by making reasonable efforts without delaying the flight. For reservations that are made less than 48 hours before the flight, airlines cannot require DOT forms in advance. Airlines can require the form at the passenger's gate. Can an airline require a passenger to physically check in at the airport to check DOT forms rather than using online check-in available to the general public? The answer to that question is no. Airlines may not require passengers to physically check in at the airport to review service animal forms. Although the airline may require a passenger traveling with the service animal to check in at the airport for other reasons not related to transporting the service animal, like if you're flying on a standby flight or something like that, or to get a seating assignment. But airlines, again, are not required to require that the passenger physically check in order to check the forms. I also want to note here, we've received this question about whether airlines can require passengers to check in at the gate at a certain time. Airlines are also not permitted to require a service animal user to show up at the gate before the time that other passengers on the flight are required to be at the gate in order to check DOT forms. So we want to make that clarification as well. Are airlines required to assist passengers with completing their forms, the DOT forms? Yes. Airlines must assist passengers at the airport who need assistance with completing DOT service animal forms, so long as the assistance would not constitute an undue burden or fundamentally alter the airline's program. So the big question, when can an airline refuse to transport a service animal? 4 circumstances. The animal poses a direct threat to the health or safety of others. The animal is disruptive in the cabin or at the gate. The animal's carriage would violate a U.S. or foreign law, or current DOT forms were not provided to the airline as required. When an airline refuses to transport an animal, must the airline conduct an individualized assessment? An airline must always conduct an individualized assessment when deciding whether to deny a service animal on the basis that the animal poses a direct threat or is misbehaving. Before denying transport to a service animal, the airline should see if there are other means available short of refusal that would mitigate the problem. For instance, if the animal is barking constantly, the airline can potentially suggest that the passenger do something like muzzle the animal in order to mitigate the problem so that the animal can continue to fly and instead of automatically denying that animal transportation. And what must an airline do if it denies transport to a service animal? Again, this is similar to the old service animal rule. Airlines must provide a service animal user with a statement explaining why it refused to transport the service animal within 10 calendar days of the refusal. So that's just a quick overview of the service animal rule, and we'll open it up to questions.
Keisha, you can unmute.
Hi, thank you for being here. I just had a really quick question. You mentioned that airlines are required to help people fill out their DOT forms at the airport if they need it. So what is defined as a burden on the airline, and who defines that? Is DOT defining that, or are the airlines defining that based on individual circumstances? So if I need somebody to actually write down the answers for me because I'm blind, would that be a burden, and would they be then allowed to refuse to help me fill out the forms?
Sure, that's an excellent question. So I think undue burden would be assessed on a case-by-case basis. If you, for instance, showed up at the airport maybe 10, 15 minutes before your flight and wanted assistance with filling out the form, that might be a circumstance where an airline might justly be able to claim that it might be, it might disrupt their airport operations by trying to assist in filling out the forms. So I think, again, that analysis is going to need to be done on a case-by-case basis. But if you believe that there were no issues that inhibited the carrier from helping you fill out the form, but you were refused that assistance anyway, we would encourage you to then file a complaint with our office so that we can further investigate that issue.
Thank you.
Okay, Melody Brenson, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you. I want to talk too about the forms. I've been hearing from several people that the forms are not fillable with a screen reader. Different screen readers, different web browsers being used, but in both of the cases that I'm aware of, very capable computer users who fill out online forms all the time. So I would like to clarify that the DOT is expecting airlines to provide a form that can be filled out independently by a blind person using a screen reader.
The rule itself does not require that the forms be fillable online. We have encouraged airlines to actually, we've been encouraging airlines to adopt some web-based version of the form so that folks can use their mobile devices to fill out the forms, because we've been told that that's actually the easiest way or the easiest medium for folks to fill out the forms, because many people book their air transportation on their mobile devices. And even the PDF form that DOT produced, which we worked hard to ensure the accessibility and fillability of, can be difficult depending on whether or not a person is using a mobile device. But so we're told that web-based platforms are actually the best way in order for folks to fill out the forms. But the rule does not itself state that the forms have to be fillable. It states that the forms have to be available on the website in an accessible format.
But if you can't fill out the form, how is it accessible? I mean, if you have to get a sighted person to fill it out for you, it seems to me that that's a lack of accessibility. If you don't have readily available a person to help you do that, but you want to travel.
So our website accessibility regulations in 14 CFR Part 382 require that airlines with primary websites ensure that their web pages and the documents on their websites are WCAG 2.0 AA accessible. So that's what that's the standard we're holding airlines to with respect to the service animal forms.
Thank you.
Area code 508, you should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Jane Perry and I'm from Falmouth, Massachusetts on the Cape Cod. And I used to travel extensively before the pandemic. My concern is when they assist me as a former healthcare professional, they don't change their gloves. That's a very big sore subject with me. I don't know how we can rectify it. Although the last time I traveled, I wore my own gloves. My second question is, I travel with a CPAP machine and my iPad. And I was wondering if it's okay the next time I travel, because they touched these things, can I embrace them in some sort of cellophane wrap or a baggie? And my last question is, when I travel, the placard is not in Braille. I mean, it is in Braille. I don't read Braille. And I know a lot of older people travel, and I think it should be either in large print or what they normally do, which I have a really good rapport sometimes, and sometimes I have a problem, is they come and explain to me how can they assist me. My last question is, how can we get in touch with you if we have a problem or a complaint? Thank you very much.
Levon or Alex? Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute here. Thank you very much for those questions. Those are really interesting questions. I want to answer the last one first. If you need to get in touch with us, we do have a disability hotline that is staffed during normal business hours by the team of analysts in our office. Alex, do you have that phone number handy?
Yes, it's 1-800-778-4838.
Alex,
And if it's,
would you mind giving that again, please?
Yes, 1-800-778-4838.
okay. I think the first question that you asked is about the individuals that are providing assistance that aren't changing their gloves in between providing assistance to individuals. I think that's something that if you're experiencing a situation with service in that regard, you may want to reach out to the airline's complaint resolution official to see how that can be resolved. There aren't any regulations that DOT has that specifically address the use of gloves by individuals that are providing assistance. But I would imagine that that's something that the airline would have an interest in ensuring that their passengers are safe. So that's something that I would suggest that you reach out to the airline complaints resolution official. They're required to make one available to you at all times that the airline is operating at a given airport, either in person or by telephone. And they are an excellent resource for accessibility related issues that may come up while the airline or its contractors are providing assistance. The other question that you asked was with regard to whether or not you can put your CPAP or iPad in a baggie of some sort. There would be nothing in any of the regulations that we enforce that would preclude you from doing that. That may be something that you might want to reach out either to the airline or to the Transportation Security Administration and ask that question specifically of them. But there would be nothing that would preclude you from doing that under Part 382 of the Air Carrier Access Act. And I think I answered all your questions. Did I get all your questions?
I muted her. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Levon. And I know I received one question. This is Clark prior to our session today, and it's probably a question for Megan. Are airlines allowed to limit the number of service animals within the air cabin or within a specific class of service while flying?
Thank you. That's another great question. While airlines can limit service to the number of service animals per passenger, an airline cannot limit the number of service animals on the aircraft or in the cabin or in a particular class of service.
All right, thank you. And unfortunately, we are coming near the end. I'm sure, Linda, we still have a bunch of hands
Oh, yes.
still raised. And I would encourage folks to email your questions to advocacy@acb.org. And if it's all right with our panelists, and once we get some of those questions, if we need your assistance, I'd be happy to follow up with you all following this event. And if folks are listening, either on ACB radio or online, feel free to either email us at advocacy@acb.org or leave them in the comments or tweet at us using the hashtag ACB Leadership 21. So Levon Chapman, Alex Tade, and Megan Johnson, thank you so much for your time here at the ACB Legislative Seminar.
Certainly our pleasure, Clark. And yes, in answer to your question, you certainly may reach out to us with whatever questions you or anyone else in your membership have.
And folks, we'll take a quick 5-minute transition here. Coming up next is our panel with airline industry representatives.
someone cue us?
Hey, everybody, this is Tyson. Clark, are you there? Everybody might be muted. I want to see when you guys are ready to go back on.
Tyson, this panel is good to go with Sheila and Sarah as the moderators.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead and pull you guys back into the stream.
And will I start talking or you, Clark?
Okay, we're back in.
Welcome to this next portion of our transportation panel. It's a little bit of a continuation of the last one. We're going to be talking about how airlines are ensuring safe air travel for passengers and their service animals during the pandemic. And I'll be joined by my co-facilitator, Sarah Calhoun. I'd like to take I'm Sheila Styron, by the way, chair of the Transportation Committee. I don't know if I was supposed to jump in before Clark or not, but since I did, I'm introducing myself. We are fortunate today to have 4 representatives from airlines that we fly a lot, and I'm going to introduce them all and then hand it over to Sarah. Because our last panel was in some ways related to what we'll be discussing in this session, we may refer a little bit back to discussion items from the last session. So I'm very happy to welcome Ray Prentice, who's consumer advocate with Alaska Airlines. We also have with us Todd Green, who is manager of customer accessibility at American Airlines. We've got Dana Folsom, who is manager of disability programs at Delta Airlines, and John Kern, who I think finally got here, is manager of international planning and regulatory affairs and accessibility programs with United. So welcome, panelists. And Sarah, why don't you go ahead and add a few remarks if you like and ask the first question. We hope to leave plenty of time for audience participation because I know there's a lot of interest in this area. Sarah? Should we wait a little longer? Sarah, I hope that you are okay. Sarah is the president of Guide Dog.
She's muted. She's muted, so she just needs to unmute.
Right. Sarah is the president of Guide Dog Users Incorporated, and we're happy to have her join us today. If she...
I'm here.
There she is. Welcome,
Yes,
Sarah.
they finally unmuted me. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sheila. And yes, welcome to our panelists. And as Sheila mentioned, I'm Sarah Calhoun. I live in Missouri, and I am president of Guide Dog Users Incorporated. I'm also treasurer of Missouri Guide Dog Users. So from here, I guess we will start with our first question. And the first question is to all of the panelists, and then we will call you by name to answer the question is how have your airline employees been trained to assist blind and visually impaired people, including sighted guide during the pandemic? Let's see, Dana Folsom with Delta, you can go first.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. So thank you very much for inviting us. Well, I just want to mention that from the beginning, obviously, like all of us, this is a new world that we're in right now. But from the very beginning, as soon as the pandemic started to reach its head in the United States around mid-March, we continued our collaboration with our advisory board, consulting them from the very beginning. They have prepared us in many ways, but as we learn more, they prepare us along the way for the pandemic than what we've been facing. And one thing that we've been advised on is the fact that those that need sighted assistance in a pandemic, this is totally unique in this space. So what we've done based upon the guidance that we've received from our advisory board is we've worked with our frontline teams as well as our vendors to make sure that whatever assistance that we're providing our customers with is always focused on safety and cleanliness. This means that our employees, including our vendors, they have to comply with the strict Delta standard that we have for cleaning requirements to meet the needs of all of our customers and our employees during a pandemic. This includes the proper use of PPE or personal protective equipment and masks as necessary, and also focusing on cleaning not only the equipment that you use if you're assisting a customer, maybe it's your wheelchairs or your aisle chairs or counter spaces, touch points, but also making sure that our vendors and our agents are regularly focusing on their own self-cleaning. We want every customer to feel confident that our employees are really taking care of those needs, even things that you may not be aware of, but focusing on that. But also making sure that our customers understand that the individual assisting them and any touch points that they're guiding them through are sanitized and clean to provide that best sort of a layered approach to help protecting them from the virus. This includes whether you're navigating or receiving navigation assistance throughout the airport or even on board the aircraft. We want every customer to feel that level of confidence.
Well, thank you, Dana. And Todd Green with American.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and thanks for having me on today. It's great to be able to speak to folks, and I'd be very interested to see what questions we have at the end from the audience. But generally speaking, I'll say that maintaining a safe environment in COVID has been incredibly difficult, to say the least, for the airline industry. I mean, you're talking about very close proximities at most touch points, but I think as an airline industry, we've done a very good job at continuing to make safety a very, very high priority, especially while adapting to COVID. Generally speaking, at American, we have pushed a ton of training and communication. I think in the last year, I've seen more training pushed than I've seen for the last 15 years that I've been in the airline industry. And that's just how committed we are to making sure that at the end of the day, our frontline employees can handle these scenarios in the most effective way possible. So again, like Delta and the other carriers, we have a very layered approach. We have a no exception policy to the mask wearing for our team members, just because, as you can imagine, especially with sighted assistants and wheelchair pushing, there's no distancing available. So the mask protection is the #1 way that we can ensure that we're reducing the spread, especially amongst team members and customers at the airport. We're working with our vendors to make sure it's a 1-to-1 ratio. We're not having vendors push 2 wheelchairs at the same time. We want to make sure that we're maintaining as much separation as possible during that journey. And of course, just like we'll mention, sanitation is huge. Anytime any one of our aisle chairs are used or one of our wheelchairs are used, we're making sure that those are being sanitized 100%, as well as all the other additional touch points throughout the airport. Cleanliness is huge. I boarded one of our flights 2 weeks ago. I have never seen it so clean before, and I think we can all attest to the nature of the cleanliness on board the aircraft now. But we constantly have our fingers on the pulse. I will say, for the airline, this has been a learning curve. I think for everybody, in trying to adapt to the standards that we need to meet to make sure that everybody feels safe traveling and restoring that confidence. So I feel good about where we're at and where we're going.
Well, thank you. Next would be John Kern with United Airlines.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. This is kind of my first time being able to speak to this group, so really excited to be here. But in terms of the question, as you kind of heard Dana and Todd already mention, United's guidelines are very similar. We've worked very closely with the Cleveland Clinic and with Clorox to develop some very strict cleaning procedures, both in the airport, but also behaviors that we expect our agents and our business partners that work with us, that they need to follow as well. So first and foremost, the same thing with the mask policy. That's required for all of our customer service agents, all of our business partners, and all of our customers as well. Also regularly, cleaning your hands, using hand sanitizer at different spots, which has become a lot more prevalent in airport locations. But as Todd mentioned too, we're using a lot of the same methodology at United, specifically with training that's been designed for our frontline agents to reiterate the facts of what is required for them. But it's also reiterated on a regular basis with briefings that we have on a daily basis with our frontline employees, regular newsletters that we're communicating internally with our groups to share any of that information that we're seeing that we need to follow in terms of creating a clean environment. And then lastly, we've also begun actually having electrostatic sprayers and things like that, which aerosolize different cleaning agents inside the terminal, in addition to aircraft, which helps disperse that and eliminate any opportunities for viruses to live on surfaces and things like that. So we've really, I think, gone as far and above and beyond as we can with creating that safe and clean environment for not only our agents and our business partners, but obviously all of you and our customers. So thank you for that question.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Ray Prentice with Alaska Air.
Hi, yeah, Ray Prentice from Alaska Airlines. And much like my counterparts, we've focused on not only focusing on providing a safe travel experience for the customers, but also sharing what we're doing to give customers the confidence that they can travel safely. I can speak on behalf of Alaska, but I think my counterparts as well. We're trying to make sure that the information is provided on our websites and in our contact centers about the travel experience. So when all of you are planning a trip, that hopefully you won't have any surprises and the information is available to you as you can start your journey. Little things like our Disability Advisory Board, well, I would say they sound little, but actually they're big, would be, when we started laying out social distancing placards and placing them on the floor, our disability board said, well, how if you're blind or have low vision, would you know that those placards are there? So we really needed to communicate. That's just one example with our frontline employees to say, you know, ask, listen, and learn. And if you have somebody who needs assistance and they've indicated that they are trying to figure out this new world out in the airport, don't assume that everybody is really familiar with all of these things that we put in place to allow people to be socially distanced. Little tips and tricks about just assisting somebody with service animals in a way so that that individual's feeling comfortable to come out into the environment, to the airport and onto the airplanes. So those are just a couple of extra things that I know Alaska's doing. We've done, like Todd mentioned, a number of bulletins. Like bulletins are coming out left and right, like I've never seen before. But we've been actually getting pretty good about getting information, compiling and getting out to our front line, and they know they need to check on this information almost on a daily basis now. So our mission is to make sure that the disability community, who we respect and value, and we want you to buy tickets and fly on every one of us, that you're comfortable doing that and that you have confidence that you're gonna, it's gonna be safe. But additionally, you know, if you have any questions or concerns, come to one of our staff members. Always, if you feel free to go to a complaint resolution official if something doesn't feel right. We want to be there for you, and we want you to come back and start flying again regularly.
Thank you. I guess we'll go on to the next question. Ray, you sort of led into it by talking about making information available to everyone. And we'd like to switch the focus now to how your company is ensuring that information is accessible to the flyers, the passengers with service animals during the pandemic. And we have obviously some particular concerns, and one in particular was brought up during our last presentation. There have already been reports of individuals having difficulty accessing the new forms. And access is not about being able to tell they're there, it's about being able to use them. And the attorney for Department of Transportation just told us all at the last session that, well, they put them up there and they were expecting the airlines to make sure that these forms could be filled out. This is a serious concern for those of us who fly with guide dogs. And so I do want to switch the focus of this question to be particularly, well, mostly about the accessibility of these forms. We would, of course, like to be, if we need to fill out these forms, because, you know, we're flying with guide dogs who we've been told we're not the cause of these changes, but now we do need to fill out these forms. We feel that we deserve to have these forms presented in a way that we can fill them out independently. So I guess I would like everyone to address, if I went to your website right now, could I fill out one of these forms? And I think I'll, and I will say that this is a problem. I won't say any of the airlines' names, but with at least one of you who is on the call today. But let's start with Todd. Do you think, has American done all it can to make sure we can fill out these forms? And are you communicating everything? How are you communicating everything that we need to know during the pandemic, flying as people with disabilities?
So let me address the form. I'll speak candidly. There is a bit of an issue with our form that's come up. We actually worked with My Blind Spot to create the one that's currently available on AA.com, but there are some issues with the signature field. So we're working through that immediately to get that updated and put back on the website, because you need a form that's accessible, especially now that we're requiring this. So no more excuses other than we're working very diligently to get this created for everybody. I never knew how difficult it was to make a form fully accessible. It's been a bit of a learning curve amongst everything else going on. So needless to say, we're working on that and should have something fully accessible by the middle of this week for sure. So happy to address that.
We appreciate your transparency.
Yeah, it's been an uphill battle with that form, but I want to make sure that everybody can use it. So we'll have that finished by the middle of this week.
And oh, go ahead. You're not
Oh
finished.
yeah, and as far as just communication is concerned, especially to the accessible community, one thing I'll say is that in this environment, we've had to learn to be very nimble with information that's coming very quickly and often overnight. And if you can imagine, a policy gets changed on a Saturday and communicating that out to 100,000 plus team members, and then getting it out to customers has been at first was very difficult, but I think we've done a very good job adapting to getting that information out to all of our customers. So customers, team members, and vendors, because as you know, if there's a gap in any one of those, there will be a disruption in the travel experience. So getting all of our vendor partners and team members and customers on one page has been definitely the challenge, but we've done a lot to move into steady state now with information getting out as quickly as possible. At AA, we have a special assistance coordination desk available on 7 days a week. We encourage everybody to use those individuals because they are the experts in anything related to accessibility and can manage any component of your travel and also stay very abreast of all the information that's coming often very quickly. So that information is also available at AA.com, where you can contact them directly. I encourage everybody to use them. They're a great resource and dedicated specifically to serving customers with accessible needs. AA.com, another great single source of information. We have a UX team here at American that's specifically tasked to make sure that the information that we get up on AA.com, especially with all the COVID requirements and country restrictions and you name it, mask requirements, is accessible to anybody who visits our website. So again, if anybody's having any trouble with that outside of our the DOT form, please let me know, because we will look to resolve that very quickly. And of course, communicating to our frontline team members and providing them a ton of information so that when you do interact with anybody, from our gate agents to our check-in agents to our vendors, we're all speaking from the same playbook and providing the same information to you. So we've made a lot of efforts in that area. Still, again, like I mentioned before, a learning curve, but we are trying to make sure we're all speaking from a singular source of truth, no matter what channel you decide to communicate with us on.
Thanks, Todd. Sounds like you're working hard.
Yeah.
And now, how about Delta Dana? Dana Folsom from Delta.
Hi, everyone. So one of the things I will say is that Delta has been working really hard on these DOT forms, and we have our forms published, and we've done our very best by working with our advisory board on disability to make sure that they are accessible through screen readers. But like any good thing that we do, this is a work in progress. So we work through that. We're constantly getting feedback, and as feedback comes in, we work to implement that and maybe refine the form, or maybe refine those fields, like what Todd mentioned, the signature field. We've learned that there's like a little trick in the Adobe software that says if you have anything that says signature, it's going to automatically prompt you to have a signature field. Well, what would be easier? Well, the feedback that we got is to flip that over to make it a text field, make it easier for someone with a screen reader to fill that out. So we take that feedback, we work with our IT team, and we see how we can refine it. Maybe we're meeting the WCAG requirements that the DOT mentioned, but how do we go beyond that to excel and to exceed those parameters? So that's something that we constantly are looking at and reviewing to see how we can refine it. And right now, I think Todd mentioned this well, we are in communication overload right now. How do we get information out? I know everyone, customers, employees, we're all getting so much information. How do we know what's the most current? So we work to have the right strategy to ensure that any communication that we have, whether it's published on our website, that it's accessible, that it's meaningful, and that it's not just a bunch of noise is what it can be. But one thing that I want to highlight is that I know Todd, I know Ray, I know John, because we all work together on accessibility issues, whether it comes to communication and strategies. Obviously, I want everyone to fly Delta all the time, but in reality, when it comes to accessibility, this isn't a competitive thing. This is a fundamental right. People should have the ability to travel and to be able to travel without barriers. So we work together to look for ways that we can remove those barriers, not only in our own businesses, but also amongst each other. How can we make it easier for customers to be welcome back, to fly on us? We want everyone, I want you to fly everywhere, like what Ray was talking about earlier. Come on back. We want you with us. So There's so much work to be done when it comes to communication. We make it meaningful, but also making it accessible.
Thank you, Dana. Mr. Prentice with Alaska.
Hi. So I thought I would share, when the rule came out, I think we had about 30 days to implement. It kind of hit right around December when holidays were coming up. It was pretty challenging for a big change like this. So I think if you hear us talking about that we're working really hard to get these adjusted and fixed, we are working very hard. And then as customers have used our website and given us feedback, I think we're continually working to tweak and adjust this. I believe at Alaska Airlines now, based on the feedback and the changes we've made, the form the form is accessible, it's fillable, and we have heard that we have made the adjustments necessary to make it work for you. And if it's not, we want to hear about that. So this would be if you're booking 48 hours in advance. And I think all the websites are pretty similar. Let's say you go and you're going to shop and buy a ticket. So now you've picked a flight and you're getting into building out your reservations record. You're going to find an icon or some indicator to say special services. And all of us have that kind of a similar process. So just to educate the group here, if you don't fly a lot, that's where during the booking path, you can click, I need a special service. And then you start to get down to I'm traveling with a service animal. That's where you're going to find, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, like the carriers, but you're going to find an opportunity to complete that form during the booking path. We would love to have you do it as early as possible so that it gives us time to kind of work with you and make sure the form's complete. And let's say it's 48 hours prior to travel. Most of us are asking that you do that. So that's the first step. Now let's say you've got emergency travel, you need to go visit a relative and it's less than 48 hours in advance. That's to where at Alaska anyway, the other option is to download the DOT form, which is a printable form, a PDF, and to complete that and take that out to the airport. And then we have that copy available out at the airport as well to complete. So those are the two ways that you can do it. I believe that Alaska and our form is accessible now, and we've partnered with a disability organization to present the form and have you complete it. The other way that you can go and you can add this form is, let's say you ticketed months ago and then you want to go and you already have a ticket. All of us have ways that you can go in and manage your reservation. So that's the other opportunity, is to go in and manage your reservation, say, now I want to complete the form. And then the final way, at least at Alaska, I think the other carriers may have this too, is on our accessible services page. You can click traveling with the service animal and the form's available there. So it's available 3 different locations for the booking website path. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. I thought I'd just share a little if you're going to travel, what you would need to do to access the form.
Thanks, Ray. And I believe, John Kern, we still have you to answer this question from United.
Yes, you do. And I just want to thank Dana and Ray and Todd for the information you shared, because this was definitely a challenge for, I think, all of our respective businesses when the information was coming, just before the holiday period. So we were actually trying to find ways to make the DOT forms as accessible as we possibly could in a short period of time, realizing that our normal service is putting people on aircraft and flying them safely, not necessarily designing IT work to get PDF forms to be accessible. So this was definitely a learning experience for, I think, all of us. And kind of sharing that information back and forth, we were trying to utilize the experience of not only the industry but also some of these other disability groups that we work and partner very closely with to give us that feedback, and certainly welcome that from this group and from the flying public in general to help us understand how we can improve our business. But we really did 3 different things over the last number of years to make these things a little bit easier. The first is that CAG accessible format for both our United.com and our mobile app, just like I think everybody else's websites are as well. So that allows all of our online information to be accessible. And then we actually partnered in the interim period here, while we are requiring the forms for anything that's booked outside of the 48 hours, that we partner with the Accessible Assistance Dogs International to work to get our DOT forms actually accessible. So we think that those forms are actually accessible. Those are on united.com today. And I think there's still a little bit of room for improvement. I think the signature piece is the same challenge for us as well as what Dana had mentioned. So we're still continuously improving that. But in the future, we're actually looking to improve that flow through united.com so that it can actually be done in HTML. And what that means is when you go on to, book your tickets or anything like that, whether you're managing a reservation as Ray had alluded to, or booking your first reservation, you can actually enter the information directly into the website. And the feedback that we've received from our Accessibility Transportation Board that we partner with is that having it available through our website makes it incredibly simple for screen readers to actually input that information, as opposed to trying to use the Adobe PDF format. So we're looking at potentially either building that internally, or potentially having another group help us with taking those forms in. So we're exploring that, but stay tuned. There'll be more to come in the next few weeks, in the next month or so. But those are the things that we've done to really make the information as accessible from beginning to end through the journey, and especially with the new DOT forms as well.
That's great. It sounds very good. I'll have to go check it out. I'm going to looking at the last two questions we have here, and was hoping that we would have time for questions. And Sarah, I hope you'll forgive me. I may ask you to
No problem, Sheila.
Skip to the fourth question, maybe. Our next question was, how are the airlines implementing the rules? And I think that we've been talking about that all along. So we do have another question here that is a little bit different, that I think our audience would be very interested in hearing your answers on. And it is, what measures will your company be using to assess the effectiveness of the DOT's new rules? Do you have systems in place that you're going to be tracking, or how are you going to know if this is working? Will you be keeping track of how many people are having difficulty with the forms or other aspects of the new rules? So I guess, Sarah, go ahead and call on people. I feel bad that I took your question away.
Oh, no problem. And I just like with the representatives that we have today, I can just imagine the chaos and the the communication overload that was mentioned with this new rules being released in December on top of the pandemic. And then we've got the vaccine on the horizon. So I'm sure it's been quite a roller coaster ride, but we all appreciate your due diligence and ensuring that we all have a safe flight. And hopefully we will be in the air very soon. So let's see, for our first, how about John Kern? We will, with United Airlines, responding to Sheila's question. Comment.
Yeah, so I think number one, that's a great question, because it is it is tricky. There's a lot of different aspects to it, and so we're looking at it through a couple of different lenses. First and foremost is beginning to track our data. How many passengers are actually booking and adding these SSRs to their reservations to help us understand exactly what the volume is. So we've been doing that on a regular basis, and we've been doing some analysis on the change from emotional support animal and trying to see, is that creating more service animal requests and things like that, as we see those passengers potentially moving to the psychiatric version. So we're doing some analysis on what we're looking at in terms of future bookings, current bookings, that type of stuff, to really help us assess what is the volume of travel that's out there. And then secondly, we are always investigating any incidents that happen on board. And so if those events happen, we ask all kinds of questions of the person that was involved, passengers on board or in the area, our agents, that type of thing. And that really helps us understand what some of the root causes for of a particular incident. Was it a miscommunication? Was it something else? And so those types of incidents also help us understand, where we have opportunity to improve communication or sharing additional information with folks, so that everybody understands what the expected processes are once you get to the airport. So we do both of those today. We're going to continue to use that information to guide our decision making as we go forward. And then we also use that information to help us identify future opportunities for internal communications and additional training that may be designed as well. And so a lot of that information, we basically digest that down and we talk about what the issues are, not necessarily what the specific events are, with our Accessible Travel Advisory Board. And so that really helps us understand where some of these issues are arising and how we can actually utilize the experiences of those customers that are in the disability community to help us improve our current training and our current communication practices as well.
Well, thank you. See, next how about Ray Prentice with Alaska Air?
Hi. Along the same lines that John mentioned, we will be looking for, I would call kind of like basic metrics, like what's the shift between pets and service animals and emotional support animals, and watching the relationship there. We will continue, a lot of the changes for this rule was to ensure that people are traveling with legitimate service animals and that the animals are behaving on our flights because of the incidents we've seen in years past, including people with service animals having their animals attacked and sometimes having to be retired. So when we train our employees at Alaska Airlines, we want to say that the service animal community, they have the right and they should be able to fly and not worry about being stigmatized when they fly by airline employees thinking that it's not a legitimate animal. And second of all, that the animals and the travelers are safe. So we want to track, and we're starting to see just a little bit, which is a few red flags going off for me in terms of breeders basically completing forms and saying that they're service animals, and some of these online paper mills that produce documentation, we're starting to see emails from them encouraging their clients to just complete the form and they don't have to pay anymore for a doctor's letter. That's concerning to us. And I think the airlines, we're going to do our best to see if we can see if that's a blip or if that's a trend that we should be partnering with our regulators, with Alex and Levon and everybody at DOT in terms of what we're seeing. We want you to be comfortable to fly, to have a good experience. And we're trying to make this change have as minimal impact on you as possible, because the people on this call today are not our problem. You have very well-trained animals. When you fly, it's not a problem, but we want to make sure that you're able to fly safely with your animal as well.
Well, thank you, Ray. Next, how about Dana Folsom with Delta Airlines?
I couldn't agree more with John and Ray on this. Data is so important for us. So we rely a lot on data, whether it's coming from our customers. We get feedback from our customers as to how things are going, but also our frontline teams and our flight attendant groups. One thing that I think Ray touched on this well as John, as carriers, and I know at Delta, we're convinced that a fraudulent service dog makes it difficult for the legitimate dogs to do their work. And that's so important for us as carriers. I know we're all very passionate about it. So we work hard also in supporting our frontline teams on how they can identify and how we can address those fraudulent or fake service animals so we can protect the rights and protect the responsibilities of those legitimate service dogs, such as guide dogs. So we've been partnering with organizations like Guiding Eyes for the Blind to give us good feedback. What are some great tools that we can use to educate our frontline teams on how we can identify these dogs, not once they're on board, but before they even get on board? How do we take that data that we get? How do we make it meaningful? Go through these scenarios that we're discovering, where trends like what rate we're seeing an increase in breeders, and we're seeing an increase in animals that really aren't fit for public access. How do we take that? And how do we work to resolve those issues and stop them? So there's a lot of work that we're all working on together to see how we can also, like to Ray's point, work with the DOT on addressing these top concerns that we have.
Thank you, Dana. And Mr. Todd Green with American Airlines.
Thanks. One of the biggest reasons for this change, and we're just so happy with the direction the DOT went on it, is to obviously, from a safety perspective, ensuring the safety of our crew members and our team members. So one of the things that I know we're tracking here is things that are related to the safety of our employees and our customers flying with us. So making sure that we're not seeing as many OJIs, on-the-job injuries with individuals due to untrained animals. Incident reporting, we used to see tons of incident reports around dogs lunging at other customers or creating disruption in the cabin. So different things around incident reporting as well from a metric perspective, we're definitely looking at. And kind of what was already talked about is the experience component. So making sure that we're making sure that the experience is great for everybody who has a legitimate service animal. So looking at our policies and procedures and tracking information that's coming from specifically from our end, it's our special assistance coordinators. They're the ones who actually approve and speak to most people related to service animals. And so we get a lot of information from them on things that are problematic and for legitimate users. And we're working on ways to enhance that process, and especially the information coming from the airport. So, we get a lot of complaints about the whole 48-hour notice period. We need our team members to know that they need to make reasonable accommodation while they're at the airport. So that's something we're aggressively working on correcting. And also, this is a new process for everybody. This is a very new process for legitimate service animal owners, like folks on the call. So our team members need to be empathetic to that and make sure that they're working with you to help facilitate an easy transition to this new procedure that we have. So the experience component is just as big as the safety component, and making sure that we're accurately tracking and ensuring that we're successful in both fronts for all of us.
Hey, this is Ray. I would just add one thing I want to ask of everybody on the call. The form being completed and approved is per trip. But we do see some people who maybe gone off to Hawaii, they've been vacationing been over there for 6 months, and now they're purchasing a separate ticket to come back. Anything we can do to get the word out. So that's why I'm so happy about these calls, that we can help with the traveling population of service animal users to know about the forms, to know to work with the carriers, the websites, or just call them and ask how I can get this complete. If possible, give us a little advance notice so we can work with you. So we can kind of get this done before the day of trip. And if you do have an emergency trip, we'll take care of you out at the gate. But I just love the fact that you're partnering in terms of helping get the word out so that you can help us, because the rule came out. It's not been out that long, and we want everybody to be comfortable and familiar with it, and what's required.
Yeah, Ray, and just to add to that, this is Dana with Delta. I think one of the advantages of the forms that the DOT has provided is that you can use the same form, whether it's United, whether it's Alaska, or whether it's American, Southwest, whichever, because they're DOT provided forms. You don't have to worry about the content changing, or do I have the latest form? I'm flying on Delta this week and I flew, United last week. It's the exact same form. So I think that's a win for the disability community as well. So.
I believe we've answered everyone has responded to that question. And Dana, what you just said, I will bring up the first question, and then hopefully we will have a little time to do some audience questions. Yes, it is the same form, but it's appearing differently on the websites, and we have to get it to the airlines. And it appears that everyone's website looks a little differently, and the form is appearing, not to be exactly the same, or does not function the same for those of us who have to do this with screen readers. So I guess as a person who has to do this, who hasn't yet but will, uniformity would be nice, but I must say that at this point in time, it doesn't exist because of all of the complications. And I know that people have had difficulty with the forms, at Delta and a couple others, and we're not there yet. So I hope that today will encourage all of you to go back to your various companies and redouble your efforts, because this isn't an easy change for us, and it isn't convenient so far. Do we have time to take a few questions from the audience?
Hey,
I don't
Sheila,
know.
to answer one question though, the information is all the same, and maybe that's a different way to look at it. The form has information about you, who the handler is, handler information. There's the animal health information, which I bet everybody on this call knows their vaccination records, and they know who their vet is. And then the next is the animal behavior piece of it, which is attesting their animal's trained. I doubt anybody in this call isn't absolutely confident that their animal is trained.
I'm going to interrupt you and just say that, yes, of course, that's true. Everyone knows their animal, and they know they have access to when their rabies shot was provided, even if, but it's the difficulty of getting that information onto the form and getting it submitted in an appropriate fashion and being able to do that independently. That's the point that I'm making.
Totally understand. Totally
so-
understand.
So I didn't hear anybody on ACB radio or one of our Zoom czars. I like that, Zoom czar. Can we take some questions? Do we have time for questions?
Well, you have about, it's 4 minutes before the hour. I really don't know what your time frame is. I'm sorry.
Okay, maybe.
We do have hands up.
Go ahead and take 2 questions. I think.
Ray Campbell, you should be able to unmute.
All right. Good afternoon. This is Ray Campbell speaking. As a matter of full disclosure, I do work for one of the airlines on this call. I won't say which one, as a senior accessibility analyst, and I'm certified as a certified professional web accessibility. The DOT forms, as they came from DOT, were not, and I believe still are not, accessible to be independently filled out, as Sheila so eloquently stated. You can read them, but if you can't use them, they're not accessible. So thank you, Sheila. Did your companies engage in any discussion with DOT to make these forms fully accessible, and so that you could just plop them onto your websites? And if you did, what reasons did DOT give for not wanting to do more work to make these forms fully accessible? Thank you.
I'm going to answer first. Ray, were you on the last session where an individual from the DOT said that wasn't their job, that they said if we could see them up on their website, they had done everything they were supposed to do?
I did not hear. I was not there, Sheila, or I don't remember that. So,
and that may not have been very eloquently stated, but I don't believe that. If any of the airlines representatives want to respond to that, but that is what the DOT said in the last call.
Okay.
And I believe the DOT actually. Oh, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I would just add this: if there are problems making these forms accessible so that the traveling public with service animals can't get incomplete, my view is we're going to get that addressed so that you can do this. You should be able to complete these forms and use screen readers and provide.
You guys shouldn't have to do it, though, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway.
DOT said that it is on the airlines, so we do have some work to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Can we take one more question, maybe, and then I'd love to thank everyone.
Oh, come on, computer. Terry, you should be able to unmute.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this great call. I will make this quick and short. I'm a traveler and newly blind, and I just want to say to all the airlines companies that are here, I learned about this new resource tool that we have. It's called IRA. It's not investment retirement agent accounts. It's actually a service that I have found to be free at a lot of airports. And that is something that maybe you can make sure is free, because they can help us fill out forms. Another thing is thank you for all you guys are doing. And I know we have a lot of opportunity of improvement to help us continue our independence and travel. So I just wanted to share, that might be just a quick, simple email you guys can send out to all your flight agents about IRA. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for that. For anyone who doesn't know on the call, IRA is a service that is sometimes free and which also blind people pay for, which utilizes trained volunteers over the telephone to provide information, and you can use Team Builder and other technological wizardry to accomplish things that people who can't see need to get done. And I want to just thank ACB Radio, everyone who planned this great opportunity to get together. Ray Prentice from Alaska Airlines and Todd Green from American, John Kern from United, and who am I leaving out? I did leave out somebody.
Dana.
I skipped over Delta Dana. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Dana
Sheila. No.
Folsom from Dana
This is-
Folsom. I looked at my list out of order. Dana Folsom from Delta, and to my co-host, whose toes I didn't step on too badly, Sarah
Not at
Calhoun
all.
from Guide Dog Users Incorporated. Thanks to everyone, and take a
This has
quick
been a
break
wonderful
and join
session.
us for the automotive accessible vehicles.
Yeah, autonomous
Exactly.
vehicles is coming up.
Autonomous.
Autonomous vehicles is coming up next.
Thank you so
in
much.
a few minutes. Thanks, everybody.
This
you,
has been-
everybody.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So there's going to be a brief break here, folks. This is Rick Moran with ACB Radio. Brief break. I just checked with Clark, and autonomous vehicles is coming up next. So stay tuned. We'll probably be back in 5 minutes or so. Thanks,
Can I-
everybody.
Can I say stage fright?
Stage right. Yeah.
Sheila, you did
Automotive.
awesome. You did wonderful.
Automobile. I knew it started with an A. Okay. Oh my goodness. Well,
Oh.
everyone, thanks. Anybody's still here. My speech is muted, so I can't see who's left.
Sheila, you did great. If you can hear me, this is Sarah.
I can hear you. Okay.
I think that was a fantastic session.
It was.
I think
Maybe
it was
we could reach
pretty
maybe we could reach out
dynamic.
to
Yeah.
them. Maybe we can reach out to them and they can forward their information, their website, phone numbers, their disability help desk.
Yeah.
And we can
I
post
think,
that.
Do we? I know we're supposed to. I'm sure we can probably, but they're all. I'm sure that they would prefer that whoever they have listed on their websites in those departments are the ones that get contacted. But we can definitely, check with Clark, who was the one who got them all lined up. I know we're supposed to toe the line and not be too hard on them, but honestly, they have to get this done, and I hope that we weren't too over the top with, holding them accountable.
The forms are the first and foremost topic that is, as you well know, Sheila, in the guide dog community with people flying, and it's very. And there was one lady that did use IRA, and she still had difficulty in the signing process of the form.
Well, that's interesting. I've never done anything like that with IRA. Had them help me with something on the web, so that would be.
So I just want to make sure you understand all this side conversations being heard by everybody.
We're
So,
still here, yeah.
Yeah, please.
So,
That's Ron Brooks.
I think we should probably go so people do have a time in case they find us too interesting to take a break. So, but thanks everybody.
Thank you all.
Before we go any further into lands.
Excuse me, Sheila.
Yes.
We need to commandeer the breakout A room for the autonomous vehicle panel.
Yes. We were just saying goodbye. We're going.
Hey, George.
Hey, Ron, how are Clark, if you just let me know when you're ready to go, and I'll kill the music and put you back into the stream.
Ron, this is Clark. It looks like you have all your panelists and you are good to go.
All right. Let me know when we're ready to rock. We can start now?
You guys
Absolutely.
can start anytime.
All right. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this panel on a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. My name is Ron Brooks. I am a member of ACB, a longtime member of the ACB Transportation Committee. I'm also a member of the transit industry. I've been working in public transit for about 27 years. I hate to say that. I live down in Phoenix. Yeah, and this topic is really exciting. Talking about autonomous vehicles, I could do this all day with anybody who would be willing to talk and listen, but they did give us a time limit. So I'm going to just jump in and set the stage and then introduce our speakers. And we have some amazing speakers to talk about this topic, and then hopefully have some time to get into questions for those of you who are listening and participating. I think it was about 10 years ago, we started talking with an ACB about autonomous vehicles. And back at that time, at least to me, it seemed like science fiction. You know, the idea that you could get into a self-driving car and sit there and the car would just go where you wanted. It seemed far-fetched, but autonomous vehicles are here. They are coming quickly. The companies who are manufacturing them are developing the technology. They are building vehicles. They are testing it. And in some cases, these vehicles are being deployed. So it's here. And at the same time that the vehicles are coming into existence, regulators are starting to talk about how do we regulate this industry? How do we make sure that it works for everybody? And that, I think, is where we come in terms of speaking around the issues of folks with disabilities, people who are blind or visually impaired. It's really up to us to make sure, working with the manufacturers and the regulators and other folks involved in the space, to make sure that this technology and these vehicles work for us. The ACB has been involved with a number of efforts by different manufacturers and by the industry as a whole to bring accessibility into autonomous vehicles. And I think today is really a good opportunity to check in on this discussion, to find out kind of what's happening. How is it going? What are the challenges? And where do we go from here? And we've got three speakers who really are working directly in this space and in these issues. I'm going to introduce them quickly and let them kind of go from there. I'm going to introduce our speakers in the order that they are going to present. And then we should have a little bit of time left over at the end for comments, questions, and conversation. So I want to start with George Ivanoff. George is the head of international policy at Waymo. And of course, Waymo is an autonomous driving technology company. George's role in the company is to work on key regulatory and policy initiatives. Prior to taking on this, George has been in this role ever since Waymo was founded in 2016. Before that, he did similar work for Google in a number of policy areas for Google. And in addition, he has managed emerging technology development for the telecommunications industry of association. He's also worked for the Center for Strategic International Studies. He has a number of degrees. He has a bachelor's and a master's from George Washington University, a juris degree from Santa Clara University, and he resides in the Bay Area. So we will hear from George in just a moment. In addition to George, we have Eric Danko. Eric is the Director of Federal Affairs for Cruise, and Cruise is another global leader in self-driving vehicle technology. And Eric's role is to represent Cruise before federal lawmakers, regulators, and the broader Washington, D.C. community. Before taking on this role, he led Cruise's national public relations efforts, which were really focused around creating interest and support for autonomous technology and to have informed policy discussions around some of the topics in what we call the new mobility paradigm, which is kind of where autonomous vehicles land. Eric has done a number of other things. He's been involved in high-profile campaigns, legislative campaigns, public affairs, and even electoral campaigns for more than a decade. He's a native of Chicago. He's got a bachelor's degree from the University of Rochester and a master's degree from the London School of Economics. And then finally, and last but certainly not least, is David Furukawa. David is the co-founder and chief experience officer for a company called Foresight Augmented Reality, FAR for short. And FAR is in the space of wayfinding and using technology to improve accessibility. David has 20 years of clinical experience as he is a retired clinician at the Emory Eye Institute, which is part of Emory University in Atlanta. Dave has also done a lot of work in the community. He served as a board of trustee for the Georgia Foundation Fighting Blindness. He has served on the board of the Center for Visual Impairment, and he organized the 2010 Atlanta Vision Walk. Dave is accompanied, and I assume that this is true even virtually. The dog is hanging out, his guide dog, Samson. And David says that his perspective as a clinician and as a customer, person with a disability, gives him a unique perspective on some of the issues that we all face every day. So our folks are going to go next. So I'm going to turn it over to George, and y'all can just go in turn, and then we will come back and have some conversation when you are finished. George?
Thanks so much, Ron. I want to thank everybody for your time today. It's really a privilege and a pleasure to be with ACB today for the session. So I'm excited to chat with you today about accessibility work at Waymo. This is something that's been going on for a long time, and it's been a high priority from the very beginning. As Ron mentioned, we're an autonomous driving technology company with a mission to make it safe and easy for people and things to get where they're going. And that's really been the same from the very beginning. From our start as a self-driving car project at Google in 2009, all the way to becoming a separate company in 2016. Today, we run an autonomous ride-hailing service near Metro Phoenix, which began being tested in 2017 and became a fully commercial, fully autonomous service in 2020. It's in a 50 square mile area of the Metro Phoenix area where we've served thousands of trips to the general public, to riders of all different ages and different abilities. Recently, we started a fully autonomous rider-only service, meaning that the vehicle is responsible for the entire driving task. There's no human driver, there's no other passenger, there's no vehicle operator. And this really means that for any rider in the Metro Phoenix area, you can summon a ride with the Waymo One app and be the only person in the vehicle. Really something that the community has discussed with our company for many, many years, well before this was even possible. And since we began the service, initially in a test phase, one of the most critical things to us has been collecting rider feedback and identifying opportunities to improve the service for everybody. We particularly have wanted from the very beginning to understand how it can meet the needs of riders with disabilities. And to do that, we've done research at multiple levels with individuals with different levels of mobility needs. We've done analysis of how riders may use other modes of transport, ranging from TNC services to public transport, to really inform the kind of thinking that we did in the early years. We also offered test rides and run dedicated pilots with local groups for extended periods of time, encouraging really feedback from communities with different abilities, including a pilot with the local transit entity, Metro Phoenix Valley Metro. We've also interviewed a range of individuals over the years who have different needs to make sure that we are capable and building features to accommodate for those needs. And ultimately, we believe that that together has helped us and will continue to help us improve the service for all users. In a minute, I'll just talk you briefly through the different ways we're doing this today and how we're designing the app for accessibility. But before I do that, I just wanted to stress two things very quickly. One thing is that we know that at Waymo, our work on accessibility isn't done. We're still in the early days of this, despite being 11 years into the development of this technology at Waymo. And we understand that the service is a work in progress today, and that will be a work in progress going forward to meet the needs of our riders. We've heard very clearly from the community, loud and clear over the years, that there's nothing about us without us, and we've heard that. We want to make sure that we're constantly engaging on this. It's a process, and it's an ongoing journey of collecting feedback and internalizing to make sure that we are improving as we go. Also, I want to just point out that building for inclusive design at Waymo and having the features really is something that's key for the community and really for the audience that we're discussing this with today. But it's also something that we really think is important for everyone overall, and we see significant benefit to the features we're developing for accessibility needs for the broader rider base at Waymo. So this process for us begins with rider onboarding. This is really where accessibility begins to come into play. And at the rider onboarding phase, we need to make sure that from the very beginning, the experience is optimized from people. That's why we have screen reader features in place and app integrations for screen readers to make sure that riders have a clear understanding of how to take advantage of the key features. Educating at the app level and at the user level on how to use those accessibility features is really key to making sure that we're matching the best capabilities of our service for the needs of the rider. Some of the key things that we're letting the riders know in the beginning is what to expect in the vehicle, how they'll have the vehicle to themselves, what to expect of the features that will be communicated in the vehicle, where to find certain features, for example, like braille accessible buttons as well. We also want to stress in the beginning what the service is optimized for and what to expect when the service is in normal operation, but what to expect in other events that may happen, like a collision. And finally, we want to make sure that once those features and once the expectations are set for the rider, they really know how to connect with a human being at the end of the day who's a member of our rider support team. These are customer service agents. They're at the push of a button, able to assist every rider, but to make sure those agents are able to assist riders who are blind and low vision with their specific needs. So at the starting phase, once you're onboarded and once that's complete, you can request a ride through the Waymo app. But when requesting the ride through the Waymo app, we have a feature specifically dedicated to minimize walking time. And it's a feature designed for users with disabilities in mind, and it's one that really ended up being valuable for everyone. Here's how it works. Sometimes our vehicles have to make trade-offs in terms of giving riders more walking time, but a shorter overall trip journey. So for example, if a Waymo vehicle needs to circle the block to pick up a passenger, it may instead decide to stop on the opposite side of the street to limit the time to pickup. This behavior may have a disproportionate and negative impact on users with mobility or vision impairments. And these users may instead request that the Waymo vehicle circle the block so the user doesn't need to cross the street, and they can do that with this dedicated feature. And for example, we provide pickup and drop off warnings with this feature enabled for long walks before the trip is ordered, which allows riders to change their plans before the trip is ordered so they can decide to decline the ride if it doesn't work and to make sure that it's showing up on the appropriate side of the street. This also extends to vehicle assignment and making sure that the rider knows if for whatever reason the vehicle cannot be assigned to complete their trip, that that vehicle will not be available. Once the vehicle arrives, we make sure that there's appropriate identification. And we've implemented something we call vehicle ID, which really helps riders with lower vision who can see color, a few bright letters from far away displayed in the dashboard of the vehicle with their initials. This is a 2-digit personal ID representation on an LED screen in front of the car, which can be customized by color. And one that we, again, have found is also useful for all riders. We initially have included horn honking. This is a feature that was designed for blind individuals by an engineer who's worked with our team who himself is blind. And it's a feature that was implemented a number of years ago, but we found once again is extremely useful to find the vehicle when wayfinding alone is insufficient. And the rider support level for customer support once a passenger is in the vehicle. I mentioned that we've trained individuals to make sure that they're ready to assist. And that really means assisting users with text-based chat support, assisting users who are hearing impaired with different support methods when possible, and using GPS-enabled tools when possible to speak with a rider and give directions in advance to help the rider find the vehicle in real time. Once taking a ride, we have verbose audio cues, which are enabled as some of our accessibility features. These are features for assistive audio. They really provide visually impaired riders more context around what's happening. What is the vehicle seeing? Why is it stopping up ahead? Why is it staying or maybe taking a little bit longer at a certain intersection? And really giving contextual information that normally would be available just on the screen of the vehicle years ago only was. Really made available through audio cues throughout the trip and built for inclusivity in mind. We've also extended features all the way to trip interruptions. So if there's ever any interruption in the vehicle trip, including, for example, if the vehicle is involved in a collision, making sure the passenger knows what to expect, and that a Waymo roadside assistance team member will be on site to assist in that situation. And lastly, finding a destination at drop-off is a key area that we're continuing to build out and work on. And this really brings me to one point about what we're working on in the future. We had the great privilege of participating in the USDOT Inclusive Design Challenge and being selected recently as a semifinalist in that program. And we really identified that it's provided us with an opportunity to really showcase some of the work that we have that's coming up, that we'd like to continue working on and continue building out, because these features really are not going to be the be-all, end-all. So a couple of areas that I wanted to talk with you all today as part of the Inclusive Design Challenge, where we expect development will continue and some of the final prototypes presented through 2022. Here are some of the features that we plan to be contributing and we're developing for that challenge. One, adaptive app navigation to help riders understand the distance and the direction of the car using visual, audio, and haptic cues in the app. Two, purpose-built car sounds. This would let the vehicle play more euphonious sounds designed explicitly for wayfinding, in addition to just a horn honking feature. Three, locating the vehicle with lights, using the vehicle's headlights to help riders wayfind to the vehicle, using that set of lighting. Four, hands-free vehicle communications. So instead of a rider waiting to press a button in the app and wayfind their way through Google Maps to the vehicle, we're evaluating options to proactively reach out to the rider in advance of the trip to help determine how to best get to the vehicle. And lastly, video chat support, empowering riders support agents on our side to video chat with riders using their phones and the phone's camera to provide wayfinding support. And I'll close in just a couple of seconds, but I wanted to briefly call out that we can't really do this work and advance all of this development without the work of our partners. That's ranged from the broader community and ACB, and it's extended all the way down to local partners in the Metro Phoenix area, including the Foundation for Blind Children, the Foundation for Senior Living, and a number of other local community organizations that have been critical to the development of this and the implementation of these features in practice today for our rider base. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. We look forward to the discussion.
All right, I think that's my cue. Hey everyone, it's nice to be with you. Ron, thanks for the introduction, and really just echo a ton of the sentiment that you shared at the top. But first, before anything, I really want to thank you. I want to thank ACB for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. Though I wish, like last year, I wish we could have been together in person, and certainly look forward to that again, hopefully next year. As Ron said, my name is Eric Danko. I lead federal affairs for Cruise. If you're not familiar with Cruise, we're a self-driving vehicle company founded in 2013, and we're focused on improving life in cities through safer, more sustainable, and more accessible transportation. We have a deep partnership with both General Motors and with Honda, and earlier this year, we were really excited to bring Microsoft onto the team as well. The technology we're developing is called Level 4 or L4 technology, which means that the technology will be fully self-driving within a defined geo-fenced area. And it'll be offered in a self-driving car service, which is important. So moving people and goods, not selling individual cars to individual people. Right now, we actively test our cars in San Francisco, which, as anyone who's been to the Bay Area knows, is one of the most dynamic, complex driving environments in the country. We're also in Arizona and we're in Michigan, but the vast majority, the bulk of our testing is really in the dense urban maze that is San Francisco. Now, prior to COVID, our vehicles were testing on the road 24/7. Since the beginning of the pandemic, however, we've repurposed a portion of our fleet, and I've been working in partnership with the SF Marin Food Bank and with the SF New Deal to deliver meals to those in need. Now, many may not realize it, but 1 in 6 Americans right now is going hungry due to the fallout from the pandemic. To date, we've made hundreds of thousands of deliveries, 80% of which are to households below the federal poverty line. Now, that's obviously just a small part of what's needed to get our communities the assistance they need and to get moving again. We're really just incredibly humbled to play a small role in that. And I know it's not the topic of conversation today, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, because we are all still obviously going through this together in real time. And because our vehicles are not only self-driving, but they're also fully electric and powered by 100% renewable energy, we were also able to reduce 100,000 pounds of CO2 emissions that would have otherwise been put into the air had those deliveries been made by traditional gas-powered vehicles. At our core, we fundamentally believe that the status quo in transportation is broken. It's too unsafe, it's too polluting, and it's too inaccessible. Every single year, nearly 37,000 people die in US roads. That is 100 people a day. That is 700 people a week, the equivalent of 2 737s falling from the sky every single week. And today it is accepted as the cost of living in a motorized society. That simply can no longer be true. More than 90% of those fatalities are caused by human choice, human error, think drunk driving, distracted driving, drowsy driving, etc. And in addition to that, it's too polluting, right? Transportation is the leading contributor to climate change. Every single year that a gas-powered car or truck is on the road, it emits its full weight in carbon pollution. It's too unsafe, it's too polluting, and it's too inaccessible. 57 million Americans self-identify as having a disability, and 6 million cite transportation as a core barrier to daily activities. We fundamentally believe that self-driving cars represent a generational opportunity to address these issues. And Cruise, very specifically, is targeting what we see to be the root cause: the human-driven, gas-powered, single-occupant vehicle. That's exactly why what we're building is self-driving, all-electric, and shared. Now, last January, which feels like a lifetime ago, but is actually only a year ago, we unveiled what we believe to be the future of transportation. We call it the Cruise Origin. Now, the Origin represents an opportunity to redesign mobility from the ground up. Spacious campfire seating for 6, vaccine permitting, of course, no human operator controls, no steering wheel, no brake pedals, no driver's seat. Just a comfortable cabin to safely and sustainably take you where you want to go. Now, this isn't a concept car, far from it. It's production ready. We're targeting 2022 for initial build, which will be at GM's Factory Zero in Michigan, where it's already contributing to more than 2,000 jobs. And it's going to operate on GM's Ultium battery, which will be the world's first 1,000,000-mile battery. And when you layer in the fact that Cruise powers its fleet with 100% renewable energy, and that the Origin can seat up to 6, you really get a sense of its impact to safety, sustainability, and accessibility. And it's that last pillar that I really want to focus on today, because AVs can dramatically improve transportation accessibility. Because we're developing fully self-driving vehicles, the passenger will never have to take control of the steering wheel. In fact, as I just mentioned, there is no steering wheel. And that means immediately there is no need to have a driver's license to be able to travel freely. And because we own, operate, and maintain our fleet of vehicles and operate the service, no one will ever be turned away for having a service animal. Now, in the folklore of America, vehicles represent independence, right? It's how we were raised. Well, at least they used to. What we realize now is that sitting in traffic isn't the same thing as being on the open road. And we also know that our system leaves too many people behind. It's just not equitable. By removing the driver and removing barriers to free movement, we can help restore independence, and to do so for more people. Now, what I always find remarkable about the Origin is that it opens up a whole new discussion. Now, we of course talk a lot about how transformative AV technology will be because the car is driving rather than the person. And that's absolutely true and can't be overstated. But what we're also looking at now is a complete redesign of vehicles themselves. And in some ways, the freedom to design vehicles differently is just as impactful as the fact that they're going to be driverless. And accessibility is core to this conversation. And ACB's voice has been absolutely critical in our journey, both as a partner to us at Cruise and in working with policymakers in DC and around the country. Now, in fact, The very first user experience study that Cruise engaged in was done in partnership with ACB and other organizations in the blind and low vision community. We started with the question of what doesn't work in ride-sharing services today and approached it without assumption. Rather than guess at the answers, we set out to learn, to really understand where the gaps exist and how the model of shared vehicles can be made more accessible than it is today. And that's still a lot of what we're working towards. Over the course of weeks and months, we engaged in deep dive conversations, interviews, ride-alongs in traditional ride-sharing services, and ultimately a day-long co-design session with partners in the community, together with Cruise engineers and product specialists, to jointly discuss possible solutions and to together co-design approaches that can lead to a more accessible service. Now, we focused on the 4 pillars of the rideshare experience: pickup, during the ride, at drop-off, and to destination. And together what we found is that seemingly small things that happen today can present remarkably big barriers. For instance, if a driver decides to pick up a passenger in a different location every single time, or parks on the other side of a busy street that the passenger has to then navigate. Even something like finding the vehicle in traffic, or knowing where you are within the trip itself, or where you're being dropped off. Now, these are things that can be solved for in an AV. By replacing the human driver and having vehicle configuration to play with, we can make transportation more accessible by solving for variability and building both predictability and customization into the experience. Now, this is an ongoing process. It is absolutely not a one and done. And that's why our partnership with ACB is really so important and why forums like this are really so critical. But I also think it showcases a fundamental truth. The transition to an AV future isn't just about the car driving itself. It's about solving persistent problems that have plagued us as a society since we've motorized: safety, environmental impact, accessibility. And in that context, AV is really an enabler that allows us to innovate in new ways. But right now, as ACB knows very well, there are regulatory and statutory barriers that limit this type of innovation, including in vehicle design. And that's something that we're hoping to work on this year with the administration and Congress. And again, ACB's voice is absolutely critical in this conversation. Now, we've seen efforts to pass federal legislation fail in the last few Congresses, but we are optimistic looking forward. We've seen positive statements by the administration, by the new secretary, by members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. But it will absolutely take a lot of work. And again, that's really where partnership comes in and why organizations like ACB are so important. Because ultimately, this is a conversation about how the technology can work for people. That's what's going to drive this process forward, both on the technological innovation side and public policy side. But let me stop there. I know we have another panelist and obviously want to make time for questions. But thank you very much again for having me. Really enjoying this and looking forward to the conversation.
David.
Whoever's supposed to be taking over might be muted.
David, David Fioricali, are you muted? Here a screen reader. Do we have David?
I don't see anyone by that name on the panelist list. Let me go look on the attendees list real quick.
Okay. Yeah, David, if you're out in the attendance, if you are on this call, raise your hand.
Hey, Ron, this is Clark. We're seeing David on the panelists. He just needs to unmute.
Oh, you
Okay,
do
so
see
David,
him there? Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yep. So David, you got to unmute. Can we send him an invitation to unmute?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we'll just wait a minute. While we get David
There he is.
unmuted. Oh,
David, did you? Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening here.
You need help, Linda?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Okay, David.
Yes.
Okay, David. Yeah, you're unmuted now. I'm sorry. Thank you.
All right. Sorry for the technical issue. Obviously, when you're blind, sometimes find the mute button is not necessarily the easiest thing. My name is David Furukawa, and I'd like to thank Ron and the ACB for inviting us to participate on this forum. I'm happy to see that Waymo and Cruise are actively looking at and working on solutions for accessibility. Just to start out, what exactly is Foresight Augmented Reality, you might ask? Well, we are a company that provides accessibility and safety through the use of smart technology, AKA Bluetooth beacon and GPS. We provide basically a voice to the physical world, which then provides orientation. So when Ron mentioned that we were a wayfinding company, that's not exactly correct. We provide orientation information that gives you more specific descriptive information to provide you with more safety and more cognitive information. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. But just to give you a little bit of context on how we started, as Ron mentioned, I'm a retired physician assistant in ophthalmology for over 20 years. And when my vision declined to the point where I couldn't see the charts anymore, I retired and was a house dad. And I was walking my then 4-year-old son to his school, and a car ran a stop sign and hit me and hit my guide dog Simon, and was about to hit my son. But my guide dog Simon jumped up and pushed my son out of the way of the car, saving his life. But while I was recuperating in the hospital with a broken elbow, broken knee, and a broken foot, a good friend of mine who is an electrical engineer at Vanderbilt came and visited me in the hospital and said, "David, we need to figure out a way to provide more orientational information to you so you feel safe and feel more, open to going out into the real world again." Because obviously I suffered with a little bit of PTSD the first time I got out of the house after I recuperated. So that's how Foresight Augmented Reality was formed as a legacy to my guide dog Simon, who sacrificed his life. Now, the issue of autonomous vehicles, I've got a lot of personal experience with regard to rideshare, as well as having driven myself and then had to give up the car keys, using public transportation, as well as other modes of transportation. Some of the challenges that we face, which, aren't always necessarily appreciated, are the fact that those of us that are blind or visually impaired can't necessarily locate the autonomous vehicle or the rideshare, aka Uber or Lyft. Now, I heard George mention about honking the horn. Well, I'm also hearing impaired, which means that it would be very difficult for me to hear a honking horn if we were in a very dense populated area, like say, for instance, a sporting stadium or something, where you have numerous vehicles piled all in one. So how do you actually locate the vehicle? Well, that's where we come into play, where we use a small Bluetooth beacon, which would be placed either in the car or outside of the car, and it would act as a homing device or a homing beacon to direct you to the vehicle itself. Now, in addition to that, we would have the ability to provide more descriptive information, which would then give you, the information, say what the color of the car is, what the license plate number is. But then once you got in the car, we would have the ability to provide safety information. What happens if you're in a car accident? How do you contact EMS? What types of, that would require you interfacing with the Waymo app or the Cruise app in order to, interface with their agent. But one of the issues that we have worked with in the commercial sector is, what do you do if you don't have a cell phone or a Wi-Fi connection? As in the case of an emergency disaster situation. Most of the apps and or adaptive technologies utilize that type of data connection, but in certain instances, you don't have access to that type of connection. So I asked the question to George and Eric, how would the car communicate with the network server if there was no data connection? That's where FAR comes into play with beacon technology. Because beacons utilize Bluetooth technology, it doesn't require any sort of data connection. So even in a situation or scenario where there was no data connection, we would still be viable. Additionally, we're talking about when you exit the vehicle.
That is my password.
When you exit the vehicle, how do you get from, say, the vehicle to your destination? I.e., with FAR beacons, we have the ability to not only provide you with homing technology to get to the autonomous vehicle, but also get from the autonomous vehicle to your end destination, i.e., where's the door? Where are the emergency exits? Where are the stairwells inside of the building, et cetera? So there are a lot of different pitfalls or challenges that haven't yet been addressed. And I'm glad to hear that we've got people like George and Eric here at the table listening, so that we can work together as a group or a team in order to really figure out the challenges and remedy the public transportation issue, which those of us that are blind and visually impaired have, we're limited by what we can utilize. My wife once told me that if they ever came out with a cure for my eyesight problem, that I could buy any car that I wanted. And my son said, hey, Dad, why don't you buy a Tesla? Because those are autonomous. And I was like, well, son, that's science fiction. That's so far ahead in the future. But I'm really happy to hear that there are companies like Waymo and Cruise that could potentially speed up the process of me being able to utilize a vehicle, which would then allow me to get back to work independently without the use or the weight of, say, a ride share or asking a friend or a family member to take me to and from a certain location. So I'll let Ron take over.
David, thank you so much. I just want to quickly thank Eric and George. Excellent presentations, a lot of really interesting information. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I'm going to assume that that we have some folks with their hands raised for questions. We probably have time for 1 or 2. So who's our moderator?
Okay, we certainly do. Charlene?
All right. If you could unmute yourself and say where you're from and ask your question.
Right. This is Charlene Ornelas from San Diego, California. I wonder how a person who has no vision will find a vehicle if they're in a popular spot like a football stadium, whatever you're leaving, and there's several cars there. How will you find which one is yours? Not all people who use wheelchair can see. So if I'm a person using a wheelchair, one, how will I get that into the vehicle? And two, how I will secure that my chair in the vehicle if there's no driver. Thank you.
Thank you. George or Eric, one of you guys want to take that?
Sure, Ron, I'm happy to start. So I think, thank you for the question. I think it's a really, really good question. Wayfinding to the vehicle, as I mentioned, is one of the most critical issues that we need to continue working on. And while the features that we have in place for assistive navigation through Google Maps navigation to the vehicle and the combination of rider support, talking the rider through how to get to the vehicle, that's not always sufficient. And that's where some of these text-based support services may be needed for certain riders, for others it may be audio-based. So it's a combination. In terms of wheelchair access, one of the areas where we really see a need for more work is industry-wide development of vehicles that support wheelchairs. We have an array of OEM partners today that provide the vehicles that Waymo uses, but we're building the core technology, not vehicles. And this is one area that we'd like to see more development down the line. Today, we accommodate folding wheelchairs in our service platform. And in the vehicle platforms that we have today that include the Chrysler Pacifica vehicle, we can accommodate and have tested for folding wheelchair related access for riders who are able to get into a vehicle, be assisted into a vehicle, and to fold a wheelchair. For some of our new platforms coming online, like the Jaguar I-Pace fully electric vehicle, we've actually expanded more space in the trunk compartment to make sure there's space for storage for folding wheelchairs. So work continues there, but ultimately more work, as Eric noted initially, on additional types of vehicle platforms and specifically vehicle development for companies developing vehicles will be critical for companies like Waymo that are building the driver to be able to utilize those platforms long term.
Great. Eric, do you want to add anything, or shall we move to another question?
I'm happy to add just briefly, but obviously want to be cognizant of other questions that may be in queue. But really do want to thank you for asking the question. It is a vitally important one. George touched on a number of really important elements, and so I won't repeat them. But I think David also spoke very powerfully to one possible solution to the challenge that was described. I think at a very core level, one of the intrinsic value propositions of AV technology is that of predictability in being able to design solutions from the ground up. So a lot of the challenge that's inherent to what was described, not only wayfinding, but finding the vehicle, wayfinding, and then to destination, which David really spoke to. There was a powerful quote that came out of our user experience study, which is the last 5 feet can feel like 1,000,000 miles away. These are all challenges that we have the opportunity together and as partners to really work towards and really take them in peace and help make progress. So just a remarkably important question, and thank you for it.
Ron,
time for, yep.
With ultra wideband beacon technology, GPS has an accuracy of about 20 feet, whereas our beacon technology has an accuracy range of about 3 feet. But now with the ultra wide beacon technology, we're talking about maybe about 1 foot. So that's where a homing beacon would enable you to actually target exactly to the vehicle itself.
Yep, makes perfect sense. And you're being David's being modest because FAR is also one of the recipients of a US DOT innovation grant semifinalists. So, and you all are working on exactly that question of, how do we make these vehicles, this technology accessible? So there's a lot of work being done by a lot of people. Let's take one final question, a quick one.
Hey, area code 407-163, you should be on mute.
Mine will be very quick. I'd just like to say hi to Dave. Dan and I want to say hi to you, Dave. And what an amazing presentation, all three of you. But it's so good to hear you. So we have a long history. And I'm excited. And I hope I get a card. I can come see you. Mine is going to be a red Mustang, my friend. So.
Corvette. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.
It's 47 past the hour.
Yep,
I don't
so
know
I
what
guess-
your time. looks
Yeah,
like.
we have till 45, so we're actually over. But I want to thank again George and Eric and David for spending some time so we could talk about this technology. And and it sounds to me, and I'll just ask this as our close, and for us to kind of reflect on as a group is, what can we as advocates do to support the industry as it does what it needs to do? And it sounds like one of the areas that we need to really lean on is in the regulatory side, is in the manufacturing space, because as y'all pointed out, you all are developing tech. The vehicles also have to be made to work for this technology. Is that a fair statement?
I think partnership is really the secret sauce in all of this. And that's true in technology development. That's true certainly in vehicle development. It's true in joint advocacy. I mean, that's really what's going to move us forward collectively.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much again, George, Eric, David. Good luck to you. And I agree with whoever said, I think it was Eric. I hope that soon enough we can have these conversations in person. It'll be really fun. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
for your time.
Thank you so much, Ron, and everybody listening in on ACB Radio and by our Zoom meetings and over our live streams. This is Tony Stevens with the American Council of the Blind, and we're jumping into a Leadership Live segment right now as we speak. So,
hey,
thanks
Tony.
everybody, and there's my favorite co-host.
Yay.
So yeah, well done, everybody. It's great to hear familiar voices with Eric and others, and nice to hear some new voices. But great job to Ron and Clark for getting that panel set up.
So I have a question for you.
Yes,
Tony. If you had an opportunity to